Advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders from their headquarters in Tarzana, California. And I'm so thrilled and excited to be with you. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live, talking about how we can be more effective and more efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a practitioner, we know that that's really important to you. I know that it's really important to you because I'm a parent and a former teacher. I have a son who is 2.5. He was diagnosed. Let's start over again, right? I have a son who was diagnosed when he was 2.5. He is 8.5 now. He's actually getting closer to the 9 mark. And he was very profoundly affected by autism when he was diagnosed. He had the kind of autism that he regressed into. He had been speaking in full sentences, and then over a period of time just lost all of his skills, had no functional communication skills. Honestly, one of the scariest times in my life, and I hope that there's nothing that scary again, because it was terrifying, and I felt ineffectual. I felt alone. We got the diagnosis, and I momentarily had this feeling of, okay, well, at least we know what to do now, right? But then I discovered that I didn't know what to do, and as I was talking to people, it was really hard to figure out a course of action. And I unfortunately lost a little bit of time where my son could have been getting really important treatment because I wasn't getting the answers that I needed and wanted. I hope that that is not your journey. And that's part of why we're here, to help you wherever you are on this journey through autism. If you're about to get a diagnosis, if you've had a diagnosis, if you've already started ABA therapy, if you've been here for a while, we just want to help you wherever you are in that journey and supply you with answers. And I like to remind everybody at the top of the show that I am not an expert, right? I've been on this journey with my son, and I like to say that I'm a bit of an expert where my son is concerned, although not always. He grows and changes, and then I go, I really don't know what I'm doing again. But I have access to experts on your behalf, and I can ask them questions. We're going to have people in here today in the studio that can answer your questions and be really helpful to you on a variety of different topics. So I want you to take advantage of this opportunity that we've been given, you and I, to have this conversation where you can tell me what you need, what your hopes are, what your fears are, what information you're interested in knowing more about, your deepest, darkest questions, whatever it is. I want to be able to hunt it down for you and see if I can be of service to you. And so we're going to be talking about all those kinds of things. You may have noticed that I mentioned ABA, if you've started ABA, because that's one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot and recommend that you start as soon as possible. And I mean today. And we'll, from time to time, tell you how you can actually start today. I know a couple of years ago, if you were talking to somebody and they said, well, you really should start ABA, and step 1 is getting on a waiting list so that you can receive ABA services. Well, I still think that that's a good thing to do, but step 2 is to go ahead and start yourself. And you can do that. And we'll tell you some ways that you can do that starting today. And we're here to hold your hand through that, help you with some really important techniques, because here's what we know. ABA is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. So I really want to urge you to at least have it be, if not a large part of your treatment program, at least a part of your treatment program. We know it's effective. And not only that, we know it's effective across the whole wide spectrum of autism, right? And science has been able to show that not once, but so many times now. I think there's been over 100 studies that have shown the efficacy of ABA. The Surgeon General over a decade ago said that this is the gold standard in treatment for autism. Our kids make progress. And if you're sitting there and saying, well, but my child is high functioning, I think that ABA is only for high functioning kids. No, it isn't. It is for high functioning kids, but it's also for kids every place in the spectrum. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I just don't think my child is even well enough to be able to do this, stick around, because I know sometimes we show videos of kids doing a lesson using ABA, and the kids are being compliant, and you might be saying to yourself, that's not my child. I know, I was in the same boat. I would see the kids sitting at the table and, picking up the card and handing it to a therapist, nice and easy with no hysterics. And I would think, that's not my child. If my child were well enough to do that, wow, that would be great, right? But my child couldn't. But there are really early lessons on compliance and teaching a child some really important functional communication skills, which is what leads to your child being able to sit at the table and learn. And those are ABA too, and we can get there. My child did. He's in third grade, typical third grade. When by the time he got to kindergarten, we had been told he would not go to typical school, that we could just let go of that dream. He went to typical kindergarten after 2 years of ABA, and he's been in completely included classes ever since then. He performs at or above grade level, social butterfly, happy, 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 talks about when he goes to college and how he's going to be a rocket engineer. My life is so different from what I had told it was going to be, and I can tell you that that's because of ABA. So we're going to talk about that and a whole host of other things throughout the next 3 hours. But as I mentioned, this is supposed to be a conversation between all of us. And, we need to hold hands in this conversation, right? Because somebody who lives in Indiana has information that you need, and somebody else who lives in Zimbabwe has information that the person in Indiana needs, right? And all around the world, if we hold hands and exchange information and use the connections that I've been given, we can really get someplace. I really believe that. So hang with me, ask questions, tell me what you need. Don't make me guess, because I always say I gave up mind reading to be an autism mom, right? So let me hunt down the answers for you. Let me find the expert who can tell you what it is that you need to do. Sometimes it takes me a little while, right? Because I'm still a mom. And that's not going to change, right? But I will hunt down the answer for you. It's what makes me happy. And ultimately, hopefully it'll help you. Okay, so how do you participate in the conversation, right? There's lots of different ways for you to watch us. If you're watching us on autism-live.com and you see that it says live across the top of your screen, then you've got a box right there that says your questions. You can be typing into it. You don't have to log in. You don't have to give any credit card information. It's totally free. Just write in your question or your comment. You can say, Shannon, enough with this. I want to know about this. It's fine. I can take it, right? But tell me what your thoughts and your feelings and your concerns and the subjects that you want covered. Don't just sit there passively and say, well, I just wish she would cover more on toileting. Tell me. Okay, so you can do that on your questions if you're watching live. If you're watching us on any of the other places that you can watch us, and we'll talk about those in a second, or you're seeing across the top of your screen that it says rebroadcast, then you absolutely can still be a part of the conversation by emailing us. That's one of the many ways that you can get a hold of us. There's the email right on the screen for you. You can email us 24/7. We will get your email the next time that we're in the studio. We'll answer the question live or address the topic or get an expert in so that we can address the topic. But in the meantime, we'll also send you a typewritten response. How nice is that? You can also call in too. If you want to call in during business hours, somebody will be here to answer the phone 9 to 5 Pacific time in the United States. If it's during the live show, they'll ask you if you want to be on the show, and you and I could be having a conversation via via the phone. It's a wonderful thing to do. But if it's after the live show, there's still people there to take your call. And if it's after business hours, you can leave a message and we'll get back to you on the next business day. There's also Skype. I know for a lot of you around the world, Skype is a really great way to connect. You can have the option of having picture as well. You can be here live on the show with me. If you call during live hours, you can Skype in. We've been having more and more bloggers on the show, mommy and daddy bloggers. You don't have to be a blogger to be on the show. Skype in. But if you are a blogger and you want to be on the show to talk about the things on your blog, let us know. We'd love to have you on the show. We love mommy and daddy bloggers. What are the other ways that you can get a hold of us? You can talk to us on Facebook. We have a brand new, brand spanking, baby fresh, powder scent page on Facebook. It's Autism Live, and we would so appreciate it if you would like us so that we don't look like the poor orphan child on Facebook. So I'm begging, I'm pleading, give us a like on Facebook. We're going to start to get some more information up on that page for you, but we'd appreciate it. Also on Twitter, we're tweeting. I'm learning all about, I was sort of the last person saying, I don't understand Twitter. I'm not doing it. I can't do it. But I'm being dragged into this century and I'm starting to tweet. So tweet along with us. And that's Autism Live Show on Twitter, by the way. And you can watch us on Blip. We love when you guys tune on Blip. This is a direct response to something that you guys asked for. You can go on Blip and rewind, fast forward over topics that you already know about to get to the stuff that you do want to know about. It's a great way for you to be able, it's like DVRing Autism Live. So you can watch us on Blip. You can also watch us on YouTube. And on YouTube, we kind of do short and condensed little bites. So, because we know that some of you just don't have a whole lot of time, but you can search by topic and go in and watch and say, I'm just watching the thing on learning the alphabet. I'm just watching the thing on toilet training. So wonderful things to do. By the way, you can also watch us on iTunes, and now you can listen to us on iTunes. So if you're in the car and you want something to listen to, you can download our audio-only podcasts as of yesterday. It's brand new. And if you have time and want to watch on iTunes and see the whole picture, you can do that as well on iTunes. All those wonderful ways. And on all of them, you can leave comments and reviews and talk to us in that way too. You don't have to, if you're on Blip and you want to leave a comment, or you're on YouTube and you want to leave a comment, we love all of that. We so appreciate the exchange of information. Okay, we start every single day with a sort of our little warm-up exercise. We call it the jargon of the day. We know how important it is to make friends with the jargon, especially at this time of year when it's IEP season. I was thinking about this last night, thinking, you know, this is a really stressful time of year for me, and I'm sure it is for you too. Between taxes and IEPs, really, do they have to be in the same time of year? But they are. It's just one of those realities. But in any case, we need to make friends with the jargon. It's going to be really important at the IEPs. It's going to be really important anytime our child gets assessed, or anytime we're sitting and talking with any kind of an expert or any person of authority on our child's team. They're going to use the jargon, and they use it for a very specific reason, because it's so specific. So it's sort of like a shorthand for them. Well, we want to get to the point where we not only understand but start to use the jargon. I know sometimes it seems like we've gone over to the dark side, right? 7 years ago, some of these terms, if somebody had said them to me, I would have looked at them and said, what are you talking about? And now I find myself using perseverate in a sentence. It's just scary, but it happens. Okay. But we do need to make friends with the jargon, and the best way to do that, same way that we teach our kids, a little at a time, so that we don't get overwhelmed, right? So today's word is manding. We talk about this all the time on the show, and this is one of the first words you want to make friends with, because it's going to be said a lot, and it should be said a lot. And if it's not being said a lot, chances are you're not going to get the results that you want to, especially with very young children and children who have not acquired language or have a deficit acquiring language. So manding, really important, because here's the promise that comes with manding. It's sort of the hand-in-hand thing with manding. If you can get manding going on a regular basis, the challenging behavior that your child is engaging in is going to greatly diminish. How woohoo is that? How exciting is that? You can get more language out of your child and decrease challenging behavior at the same time. A 2-for-1, woohoo, right? So we really want to know about manding. Okay, let's look at our actual definition for manding. The mand, I have to get on my very official for our actual definition. The mand is a type of verbal behavior that is controlled by a motivating operation, deprivation, or an aversive state, and is followed by specific reinforcement. The mand specifies its own reinforcer. Great, right? This is what we're usually faced with when we go and look up a jargon term. I am no closer to understanding what this means, right? That's why we always give you a somewhat easier, user-friendly working definition. So manding is requesting, demanding, or asking for something. So when a child says to you, they're reaching out their hand and they're saying juice, they're manding, okay? Manding isn't always vocal, by the way. If a child is pointing to something specific and requesting it, they're using the point to request, that is also manding. A child can sign and say more, that is manding. And a child can point to a picture, and that is also manding. And I bring that up because when we start to teach manding, it is imperative that manding start to happen and happen on a regular basis, and I mean hundreds of times a day. And if we can get a child so that they're manding hundreds of times a day, then that's when we're going to see challenging behavior diminish. Now, for some of our kids, where we have to start, right? It's all about where we start, right? And that isn't going to determine where we finish. But for some of our kids, getting to vocalization is really frustrating and really difficult. So we may not start there, right? Why make it worse if we don't have to? All we need to do is get manding on board. If we get manding on board, then we can work on the tougher stuff, right? So we want to make manding as easy and as gratifying as we can, as quickly as possible. When therapists go in, trained therapists go in to work with a very young child who's engaging in a lot of challenging behaviors, and one of the first things that they look at is how often is this child effectively manding in a given day. And they might find that the child is manding 5 times a day. This is a huge red flag, because even a 2-year-old should be manding a couple of 100 times a day, right? And if they don't, we're going to get challenging behavior, because the two go hand in hand. If you do not have the power to request what you want and get it, you're going to tantrum, right? It just makes sense. It's just logical. You would do it. I would do it. Of course, our kids are going to do it. So if we empower them and teach them how to mand, and teach them that when you do mand, you're going to get the thing that you manded for, like that, boy, it flips a switch with our kids. It really does. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've got a 14-year-old who doesn't mand, and I'm just going to guess that your life is hugely challenging, and I want to give you, a big air hug and say, it does not have to be this way, that you can teach manding to anyone. You really can. But it requires you being patient and making it a priority, and making sure that you're reinforcing. So we talk about this all the time, that when you start manding, you got to think of, what does the child already want on a regular basis? Start with something small, because once the child gets it, they're going to start manding for a whole host of things. But start with something that the child wants. If they what's the thing that they're obsessed with? And that's the thing that you want to get out and teach them the way in which to request it. And you're going to have to make a decision about which direction you want to go. I think that in general, if the child is making noises already, and they're vocalizing, it's a good bet to start with a vocalization. If you've already been doing a little bit of echoics, if you can get the child to repeat something that you say or make a noise when you ask them to, you can start with the vocalization. If your child is making absolutely no sounds whatsoever, don't go there with manding. Start with making a sign or a gesture or pointing to a picture to get something. And you can prompt them through it. It's actually easier for those things than it is for vocalization. But if a child is making some vocal, you can go there. And it literally, we were talking about this the other day, if it's that your child loves chocolate chip cookies, you're not going to give a whole cookie every time, but you get the cookie out and you can hold up the cookie to the child and you look at the child and have the cookie right next to your mouth, and you point to your mouth and you point to the cookie and you say cookie, right? Now the child might go gaga, right? Any noise at all, and you go, good job, and you give a piece of the cookie. You don't have to give the whole cookie. We don't want to put them in sugar shock, right? Yeah, you might be thinking to yourself, well, but I don't want my child to endlessly be asking for cookies. You know what? Worry about that later. Worry about that later. We give a small amount of cookie, and we're not going to turn them into, these roly-poly little children that have sugar issues, right? But we have to get manding on board. If it's a child that's made no vocalization whatsoever, but you know that they love chocolate chip cookies, again, you're going to do, get out the cookie, and it may be that you teach the child to point, and you prompt the child, point to the cookie. Yes, that's, asking for the cookie, and you give them the piece of cookie. Or you can have a picture of the cookie next to the cookie and have them point to the cookie to request the cookie. Or you can teach, I think this is, I don't remember anymore, but I think that's the sign for cookie, that they can do this and then they get the cookie. The first couple of times that you're teaching manding with a specific object, it takes the longest. I always think about Annie Sullivan and Helen Keller and how long Annie Sullivan must have, been signing word after word after word into Helen Keller's hand before Helen Keller finally got it. And once she did get it, oh, those gestures that you're making mean this, and when I do this, I get it. Oh, okay, let's learn another word now. And it's the same thing with our kids. It takes a while to get those first 2 or 3, and then boom, your child starts to get it, and they will start to engage with you more. It's a really exciting time. So don't get frustrated, don't get overwhelmed, but know that manding is important. Manding is requesting, demanding, or asking for something, and it can be gesture, sign, pointing to a picture, or a vocal request. But we need to see it hundreds of times and make sure that when they're asking for the thing, you're delivering it in the beginning. Later on, we'll talk about making it so that every time they ask for something, they don't get it, and how we work through that. But in the beginning, to get it on board, the consequences for asking for something have to always be the same. You get it. You notice that in the actual definition, it said, oops, I went back one. The mand specifies its own reinforcer. So if you're asking for the cookie, you get the cookie. If you ask for juice, you get juice. If you ask for mommy, you ask for mommy, or you get mommy. So it specifies its own reinforcer. That's what that means. You ask for it, you get it. Which is a wonderful thing. Wouldn't it be nice if everything were like that in the world? But for our kids to gain language, we need to make their world that way for at least a couple of weeks. Manding, and reinforcing it. It's a wonderful thing. Okay, we also always have, I'm going backwards now, we always have for you a question of the day. So our question of the day, I love this because it gives you guys a quick opportunity to interact, not only with me, but with each other. A lot of you like to answer this on Facebook. We love that. And I think it's a good opportunity for us to be able to say the negatives and the positives and not feel bad about it, right? Sometimes we ask you things and we want to know, we want you to be able to rant, right? You gotta have a place to dump. So feel free to dump, right? It's easy to do. Okay, and I worded this question, so it's my fault that it's worded so wonkily. But who do you feel like doesn't see your child as an individual? There are some people in your world who look at your child and they see your child for the unique individual and the blessing that they are, right? And that's such a lovely lovely feeling when people look at your child and don't see just autism, right? So my question to you is, who, though, looks at your child and doesn't see that individual, that sees a cookie cutter mold of, oh, autism, which means if P, then Q, right? And they want your child to fit into this mold of this is how children with autism behave. Who in your life is that? And you can name them by name if you want to, but you don't have to. You can just say, you know, this person at my child's school, or there's a member of my family and it really ticks me off, or the lady in the grocery line, whoever it is that doesn't see your child as an individual. And then on another day, we'll talk about who does see your child as an individual. But it's one of the things that's the most devastating to me is that sometimes you will run into people who they just go, well, you know, this is autism, and I don't even know your child, but I've already made decisions about who they are, how they react, and what they need. I just want to fling these people into outer oblivion. Right? Thank you so much for your time. Don't let the door hit you in the rear end as you leave, right? Those kinds of people. So we can vent and get it off of our shoulders. I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, actually, I think it was more than a month ago, it's really hard for me to get a babysitter. For so many years, it was hard because I wanted to have somebody who was trained in ABA who wouldn't sort of wreck all the things that my child had been working on and all the progress that he had been making. Now it's not so much that way, but it's just really hard for me to find a babysitter and have it be somebody I trust, and it's hard. But I'm trying, and we were supposed to go to this big event. A friend of mine, it was his 50th birthday, and I couldn't find a babysitter, and a friend of mine said, don't worry, bring your child over. I've got a babysitter, and she has 2 kids, and she said, my babysitter will watch all 3 kids. And my son is older than her 2 kids and quite good with her 2 kids, actually is very helpful with their youngest child, and she said the babysitter will appreciate the help. It'll be so great. And we had tried to do this once before, and I had said, I don't know, you know, and she said, no, this is a great babysitter, and I know her, I can vouch for her, and we're going to be around the corner, it'll be fine. And suddenly the babysitter got sick and wasn't available. Well, first it was that she was too sick to watch all 3 children, but she could just watch her 2 children, which I thought was weird. How can you be well enough to watch 2 children and not a third older child? And it sort of set off my alarms, and I went, there's something not right there. But, you know, whatever. And then she was too sick to watch any of the children. So I said, it's just me being paranoid. Then we have the next event comes up, and she says, no, absolutely, just, you know, bring your child. And I said, I want you to check with the babysitter first. Just ask her if it's okay. I want to make sure that it isn't a problem. And then, of course, it came back, and the babysitter said, yeah, I just can't. I'm not comfortable. Because she knew that my child was on the spectrum and made a decision about him without ever meeting him. And I got to tell you, it hurt. It really hurt. And it hurt me in a surprise. It caught me off guard because I thought, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be the last time this happens, that somebody is just going to dismiss him based on something that they've heard. And there's nothing I can really do about that except continue to talk and tell people that it's not what you think. It's not Rain Man. You know? And at some point, someone in her life is going to have another child. I think what it is that she's had access to somebody who has had autism, and she thinks that all of our kids are that child. Or she saw something in a movie. But at some point in her life, she will meet other children with autism. And probably soon. And she will get to know that once you know one person with autism, what you do is you know one person with autism. But anyway, I'd love to hear from you guys. Who is it that's looking at your child and seeing a whole bunch of other people, but not your child? Let's vent and get it off of our shoulders. Okay, we always have a topic of the day. Our topic for this entire week, in fact, is teaching language. So important that we be as efficient and as effective as we possibly can. I always say, it takes a team. If it takes a village to raise a regular child, it takes a small city to raise a child with autism. It definitely takes a team. And I don't know about you, but as a parent, I do not want to be anything other than one of the strongest people on the team. And so we need to learn how we can grow our children's language, because we can. We start with functional communication because that's where we're going to get a whole bunch of things under control. And once we get functional communication so that the child can express their most basic needs, then we have the ability to teach compliance. Then we have the ability to teach anything. Absolutely anything. And that's where we get into crazy progress. So, teaching language, so important. Everything we talk about today, we're going to filter it through that. By the way, we've got a lot to talk about today. Today's a very exciting day. In fact, the rest of this week is exciting here at Autism Live. We're going to be talking a little bit about play dates and team building in the next hour. Then at 10 o'clock, we have the fabulous BCBA, Board Certified Behavior Analyst, Evelyn Gould. I always tell you, I'm not an expert, but I bring experts in. Well, Evelyn's one of the experts. She is an amazing young woman who has many years of experience working with our kids. And one of the reasons why I have Evelyn come back in on a weekly basis is because she puts things in terms that are realistic. Because we can talk endlessly about all the things we can do with ABA, but it's important that it go through a filter of what's realistic for us in our lives, right? If lesson number one of ABA is that in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing, well, that goes for us too. If ABA doesn't make sense, or what the part of the intervention that we're doing doesn't make sense and give us help and hope and inspiration and work within our lives so that it enriches it, as opposed to making it feel like we're being trapped in this world that we didn't want to be in, we're not going to get far, right? So Evelyn puts it in terms of making it reinforcing, making it easier on us, the parents. I just love that. So Evelyn comes in today at 10 o'clock. So we'll look forward to that. And in particular, we're going to be talking about today when you're trying to do something, because you get yourself all together and you go, okay, this week we're targeting whether it's toileting or learning how to do multiplication, whatever it is. You get your plan, you got your teaching points, and you say, okay, we're going to do it. And then you get in there, and sometimes you go, oh man, this is working so well, this is so fabulous. And other times you go, it's not. And what to do when it's not, how to get creative, how to think outside the box, what criteria to look at, what to change up, so that you're not throwing away the whole idea, but that you hone in on what the difficulty is and can solve it. Love that. And then, of course, at 11 o'clock today, it's Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I love Wednesdays because we get to have Evelyn, and then we get to have Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. She's the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, ACT Today, a wonderful organization that gives grants to families for the kinds of things that they need. If you need a fence, you can apply for a grant. If you need a device that can help you with apps, you can apply for that. All kinds of things. If you need assessments done, a private assessment, you can apply for a grant for that. If your child is an elopement risk and you need some ABA therapy to work on escape issues, you can apply for a grant for that. And they've given over $500,000 away. So she is one fierce autism mom, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. She comes in for an hour every week. That's a really fun, really fast-paced hour where we talk about news, what's happening in the news, and got some interesting studies to talk about today. And then I know that we're going to have a guest who's going to be talking about a very specific app that we can be using for autism. Very exciting. I haven't seen it yet, but Nancy promised me that I'm going to love it. And some events happening in our local community. And we're going to start a segment today giving a shout out to politicians who make a difference with autism, because we think that they need to be reinforced for that. So we're going to do our first political shout out today. I know it's crazy, but we're going to do that. So really exciting day today. And by the way, tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we're going to have Polly Tomey from the Autism File. She is that British mom who's shaken up the world over there. Billboards of her in a bra saying, let's talk about autism, and saying, I shouldn't have to take off my shirt to get attention for autism, but if that's what it takes, I will. You want to talk about a fierce autism mom. So we're going to have Polly with us tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And then on Friday, I have confirmation that we will have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox again at 11 o'clock on Friday, talking about research. And we might have a couple of other special guests for you throughout the week. I know we've reached out to some people. We'll see if they're free and available. Very exciting. All right, we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back and talk about play dates and how important and how we can make them a little bit easier. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And she's going to talk to us about something that I'm not entirely clear on, tacting.
Tacting is when you make a comment on the environment, and then another person may reinforce that with non-specific reinforcement.
Can you explain to me what the difference between a tacting program is and an expressive labeling program?
In an expressive labeling program, typically the therapist holds up a card, maybe with a turkey on it, and the therapist would say, "What is this?" referencing the picture. And the child would respond, "Turkey." The child is labeling the item. With a tact, it's a comment on the environment. So it can be evoked by a smell. So if I walk into the house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, I can say, turkey. Or if I hear gobble, 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 I can say, that's a turkey. So it's a comment on the environment, which is different than just naming the item.
How do you get a child to comment on the environment? That's got to be hard.
It is. We use different prompts. Most of the time we use vocal prompts. For example, we may look through a book and point to the picture of an item and say, "Oh, look, it's Nemo." Say, "Nemo," and then reinforce the child for responding. Or we may say, "What do you see?" Say, "Nemo." And then eventually we would want to fade our point away. So I may say, "Look, Nemo." And then the child is referencing that and then also saying, "That's right, I see Nemo." And then later fading completely away, so the picture of Nemo itself evokes the comment. If we're working on something auditory, maybe we have a cow on the table and we play the environmental sound in front of them, maybe give them a vocal prompt to say, "It's a cow," and the child may say, "It's a cow." And then we might fade the visual of the cow and they just hear the sound. And we prompt them by saying, say, "It's a cow," or "I hear a cow," and then eventually fade until the sound itself evokes the comment. The goal is to get towards spontaneous tacting, where the child can walk around and comment on the novel things in the environment that he hears or sees. And so that's a great way to sort of bridge to that point. Tacting is really important to get to higher level lessons of interverbal behavior. Commenting on things that are private events, or commenting on things that I can't see that you're feeling, like your stomach hurts. But it's important to have those tacts in place so you can get to those later programs.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I want to take a quick second to talk about the importance of play skills. Play skills are so important to our children. I know that when you're looking at helping your child and looking at where they have deficits, skill deficits, that often it's easy to look at social and language and say how important they are. We know we got to have those on board. And sometimes we kind of forget the important role that play skills play. So I always like to remind you to have a balanced program for your children. Make sure that you're including things that will foster development in other areas. So we know we want to target social, we know we want to target language, but a really great way of getting at those things are play skills. And that play skills can do so much for a child. I always say that when you teach a child to play and enjoy play, you're giving them a skill that will last their entire life, but you're also giving them an entree into a whole social world that I'm always so dismayed when parents say, you know, one of their biggest frustrations is that their child doesn't have friends and that their child isn't able to play with other people. Well, you know, that's a devastating thing, and it's something that makes us sad as parents, but it isn't something we have to accept. And one of the things that happens with play skills is that if we don't give the child enough opportunities, then they're not going to get better at it. And I always like to remind all of us, myself included, that we have to be careful that we don't assume that a child automatically finds play reinforcing. That, you know, when we were children, we liked to go play, and we like to play now, right? We love to get a 3-day weekend so that we can go play. But we all play in different ways, first of all, right? What's exciting to me is not exciting to somebody else. I have a friend years ago that I said, oh, I finally got an hour off. You know, my husband is there while my son's having therapy, and I'm going to go scrapbook for an hour. And she said, oh my goodness, what is wrong with you? You have an hour off, you're going to go scrapbook? But to me, that was the ultimate in reinforcement at that time, right? And my friend was like, you have lost your mind completely. Wouldn't have been her choice. So we all have different ways that we like to play, and we all have different ways that we like to relax. We should never assume that playing with a specific toy or with a specific object is reinforcing to a child. Because for our kids on the spectrum, the truth of the matter is that sometimes play is just work or frustrating or boring, right? And we can all relate to that on some level, right? Because there are some forms of play that I go, oh, skiing, I don't get it, right? But there are those of you who go, why? Skiing's so fabulous, right? Well, we'll start from a platform of saying we don't know what's reinforcing to our child yet, so we're not going to assume that playing automatically is reinforcing. And certainly playing with another child, developmentally, children typically, you know, there's a period of time in which they're not interested in playing with other kids, then they play side by side, and then they start to interact, right? Because it becomes reinforcing enough to them. That's how children typically develop. So we can't assume that there's just going to arrive a day where our child goes, oh, I want to interact and I have acquired the skills to do it, and it's all going to go smoothly. We have to give them opportunities along the way to build those skills, just like a typically developing child. We just might be doing it in a different time of their lives. So one of the things that comes to mind is working on a play skill with somebody, but giving them the opportunity to try those skills out with another child, i.e. a play date, right? I know I say it and we all kind of shudder and go, oh, the logistical nightmare of a play date. Well, there are some things that we can do to help ourselves, and one of them is to lower our expectations. That, you know, if we think to ourselves, okay, well, you know, it's so overwhelming, but I have to do it because we're going to see this big improvement as a result. you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you've come at it from a place where you say to yourself, I need to give my child more opportunities, because without more opportunities, how can they possibly get it? I'm going to give them more opportunities, and each and every time I have a play date, I am going to have it in mind what we are working on for that play date. And you're not going to give yourself more than one or two things, one or two goals. You're just going to clarify for yourself and say, okay, I want a play date where we work on sharing. Great. And we're not going to work on anything else. So, then you think to yourself, okay, of all the moms that I have as a resource, first of all, how many opportunities has your child had to share? Do you work on that with them sharing, or does somebody else in the family? Have you had an opportunity? Do you see that there is some level of mastery without another child first? And then you maybe spend a week working on that with the child in preparation for the play date, the big warm up, giving them opportunity. Then think to yourself, okay, who is the parent who's going to be the most understanding? Sharing is really hard for my child, so I got to make sure I got a really understanding parent, somebody who gets it, who understands the dealy wheelie. And if you're having trouble finding that parent, I always say to you, go to your local support group and say, does anybody have multiple children? Because sometimes somebody will have a child on the spectrum and they have other children who aren't on the spectrum. And they're going to understand and get the dealy willy. And they're going to be willing to have a play date for their other children to be able to play with your child on the spectrum. A lot of the times that can be a really great resource to find people who are going to be patient with your child and understand that your child's working through something. And sometimes you're just going to find the mom who is understanding for whatever reason. But think through your mental Rolodex. Who have I got on my team that they've got a child, and the parent and the child are going to be a little bit flexible in terms of sharing? I know we were told to find the bossy girls that we do, a slightly older, slightly bossy girl to come in, because they'll say to your child, no, it's my turn. I want to share. And they'll just tell them how it is. And a lot of times our child will go, oh, okay, apparently that's how it is. So that was what the recommendation was for my child for a lot of different things. Not everything, though. Sometimes it needed to be a boy, and a boy who was a little bit more malleable so that he could lead, right? So different things for different. But think to yourself, who's going to be the best match for this particular target that I'm working for? Whether it's sharing or turn taking or, manding with the other child, making requests of the other child, whatever it is that you're working on, whether it's functional pretend play, who's somebody who's going to want to get in and play with the play food and play in the play kitchen? Who's really into that? Who's going to want to, do those kinds of things? Well, if you're working on socio-dramatic play, who likes to play house and put on costumes? You're going to be more effective if you know what it is you're working on and match the child and the playdate family with that. There's one child I know in particular that he loves costumes. And not only that, he has an older brother who loves costumes. And so when we were working on socio-dramatic play and dressing up and playing different characters and being different people, they were a great play date because the mom would bring both boys over and they would bring their costumes and we had our costumes, and the kids would have a ball. They found it really reinforcing, and they would take on the different characters and they would act out different things, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. But guess what? We weren't working on taking turns on that play date, right? Don't try to work on everything at once. If you have an expectation of the thing that you want, and then at the end you can say, so how did we do with this? How many more opportunities, the child had some improvement? Great. Now we're going to make another play date. It's so important to put it on the schedule, though. It is and I'm saying this and knowing that I have not had a play date. We got a dog, and it's terrifying. And my son is asking for a play date. I got to put it on the schedule. I'm saying that as much to myself as I'm saying to you. We have to put it on the play date. We deserve it. It's a little bit of a break for us, not always, right? Because we're tense and nervous. But it's an opportunity for us to socialize with another parent. It's an opportunity for our child, and we need to have these opportunities. They need it. We need it. But I think if you think, what do I want to work on, and who's the family to work on it with? with, you're going to be much more productive, and you're not going to get as overwhelmed. And say to the other parent, hey, I'm working on functional pretend play, so I really want to have your child over to play with all the play food and have them make a lunch for us. And then that parent knows how to prepare their child too. So that's one of the different ways that we can work on. But remember, opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. We have to give our kids an opportunity to work on these skills. They're so important for them. Stick with us. We're going to come back with a quick tip about how we can build our team if we're hiring our own therapist. So stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests, I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and as promised, I have a quick tip for you about building a team. So many of you are out there, and we've talked about ABA, and it's important that you start ABA, and that you start ABA no matter what's going on, right? And I've said to you, if you're having problems making that a reality and making it happen, I hope that you will write and tell me what's holding you up. If it's funding, write to me and we'll do a segment on how you can get funding to start ABA. If it's that you don't have an ABA provider, then you're probably going to want to start with cardio learning and skills. And that's something that you can do today. You can sign up and do cardio learning and start to educate yourself about how you are going to be a really great ABA provider and be able to train other people. And there are those of you who are around the world who are doing this. And you guys are my inspiration. You are my heroes, because man, you're pioneers, you're getting it done, you're bringing ABA to places in the world, and you're creating change not only for your child, but for the entire world. And honestly, I admire you so much. I hear from you guys about how you're doing things, and what the tough parts are, but we know that you got to build a team, right? You can't be thinking that you can do ABA completely by yourself, just one parent. We know, because we talk about this all the time, that generalization is one of the really important keys to doing quality ABA therapy. And if we're going to invest the time and the effort, and we want to invest the time and the effort because our children are worth it, then we got to do it right. And so we have to plan for generalization from day one. And the way we're going to get to generalization is by making sure that we change things up, including people. So you can't have one person who's constantly the only teacher, because what we will have done is limit the child so that they can only learn from one person, only respond to one person. We would never want to do that. So you got to have a minimum of 2 people in order to really be striving for generalization. And I think to stay sane and centered and healthy and well, you really need to have 3 or 4 people. If that's not possible, you're going to make it work with 2, right? But you got to be mindful of keeping yourself centered and not making yourself ill. But when you're adding to your team and we've talked before about deciding, are you paying people or are you getting volunteers? And later on today, we'll show the Maddie video, a wonderful story of a family who is getting it done with paying $0. They're not paying any of their therapists. They have volunteers from their church and from their community, and their child is making tremendous progress, and they're using CARD learning and skills. It's a fabulous, fabulous thing. So it can be done with volunteers, but you got to make the decision about, are you doing volunteers or are you paying people? But when you start to bring people into your home, you have to be mindful of safety. So a couple of quick tips about how we can screen people. We've set up an interview with them, and we've met in a neutral third. We don't bring them to the home for the first interview, because you're not going to allow people into your home until you have an idea who they are, and that you really want to be, we heard this from Kathy Visconde, that you really got to do a second interview. That's really, really important to do the second interview. And I think it's important between the first interview and the second interview to do a bunch of research as well, because it's so important that we start ABA therapy, but what trumps that above everything else is that our children have to be safe, right? I know I'm preaching to the choir, but if you're going to bring people into your home to work with your child, they have to be trustworthy. They just have to be. And so guideline number 1 is trust your gut. If you are getting they might have the perfect resume, they might have the perfect references, they have worked with children with autism forever, and your brother-in-law says, I would trust them with my life, but if your gut says, guess what? It's an I trust your instincts more than anybody else. Sometimes you don't know what the feeling is. Doesn't matter. Your gut says no, it's a no. And I think stop questioning yourself at that moment. Just, there will be somebody else. If you're getting a vibe, it's done. You don't want to be in a position where you're saying, oh my gosh, why didn't I listen to myself, right? Done. Boom. But don't stop there, right? Don't just go off of your gut. Check Megan's Law. There's a website that you can go to that's Megan's Law. You can Google it. I think it's just meganslaw.com. And you can look up who the registered sex offenders are in your area. Well, you know what? And I think that that's something that everybody should just do anyway, even if you're not hiring therapists, not having volunteers. Just know who the people are in your neighborhood, but realize that that's only a limited piece of information, because there are people who haven't been caught, and there are people who are about to be offenders for the first time, right? But so we don't take that as the be-all end-all, but it's really beneficial to go on Megan's Law and take a look at what's happening in your neighborhood. Better safe than sorry, right? Get yourself a video baby monitor. You can get them at most toy stores. You can get them really inexpensively on something like Craigslist or at garage sales. Almost everybody who has had a baby in the last 5 years had one, and they're selling them. So sometimes you can get one for $1 that works just fine, but you want to have a video baby monitor, and maybe you want to have a couple of them. And I think that you want to do this for a couple of different reasons. First of all, when somebody's working with your child, you want to ensure that your child is safe and okay, right? But also, it's an opportunity for you to learn. If you've got a really good rock star therapist who's in there and working with your child, you're going to be able to be in the other room, maybe being a little bit productive, but focusing a little bit on what's happening, and learn so that you're going to be a better member of the team. And if it's somebody who's not a rock star, who you're needing to help and support and help them, then you want to be watching and seeing what's happening so that you can give them notes afterwards to say, loved it when you did this, here's what you need to do instead of this, here's another way of thinking of this. And don't be bashful about that. Don't let somebody be given shoddy therapy to your child. If they really want to be a part of your team, they will be responsive to the notes that you're giving. And if they're not, bye-bye, there will be somebody else. Check references, make them get multiple multiple references and do check them, but don't stop there. And at the end of the day, look for people who are incredibly passionate, who are imaginative, who are creative, who seem excited to work with your child and are willing to think outside the box and willing to learn. And I think always the passion is one of the huge factors. If somebody's passionate about something else, that passion is capable of being transferred to helping your child learn. I don't know very many people who, when they see a child who doesn't have a capability and that is given a capability, I think that most rational people get excited. And somebody who doesn't, you don't want on your team, right? Okay, quick tip. We have to show you the A word now. This week's A word. Wonderful episode. I'm not going to intro it too much because we're in the middle of the week, but we talked a little bit about play before and how important it is to work on play skills, and take a look at all the different things that they can work on while playing with trains. When we come back, we are going to have the wonderful and fabulous Evelyn Gould with us here in the studio. But first, take a look at the A word.
Jack Riley starts his day with Jessica and AB therapy at 8 a.m. Each session he has lasts around 2 hours, with a total amount of therapy of 40 hours per week. This includes occupational therapy, speech therapy, and ABA therapy.
What do you want to play with today?
Train.
That's what I thought. Yay, there you go. There's trains and tracks. Nice.
So what's an average of programs you try to get done in a session with a kid?
I try to incorporate a lot of things as much as I can. Like, for instance, if he was playing with trains, I'd incorporate functional pretend play. So that's just basically teaching him how to play with the toy appropriately, the way it's supposed to be played, building a track and having him move, and using vocalizations. Choo-choo, let's go, all aboard, things like that.
Choo-choo. All right, say all aboard.
All aboard.
All right.
As he's so little, we're building a lot of language. It's language all the time. So we work on banding, so having him request for things for me.
What trains? What track?
We can also work on tacting, which is having him label like the colors, the names of the trains.
That's the trees. It's
Thomas. Also, we can work on gaining attention. I would withhold the preferred trains or tracks and have him tap my shoulder to get more pieces.
He wants to go.
Hi, what do you want?
What train?
You want trains. We can also work on compliance, like come here and give it to me. Wait. Come here. Good job, mister. So there's a lot of things I can kind of incorporate, at the same time in one sitting. And as far as his behaviors, I haven't really seen anything. Hey, sit up. Well, just now. Yeah, with his visual stereotypy, his is just looking at things from a different angle or sideways or upside down. But he rarely engages in that except just now.
What?
Pickers.
Huh?
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Susan.
Hi.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I'm filming you.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Say hi, everybody.
Hi, bye.
Who is that?
Jack.
Jack? Jack who?
Jack Riley.
Where's your nose? Where's your ears? Where's your eyes? Where's your chin? Ooh.
Where's your teeth? Is that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your head? Where's your tummy? Okay, I'm gonna need you now. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a hat? Clothes! Oh my goodness, you're so smart.
Jessica and Jack Riley are continuing to work on categories.
Give me vehicle. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Give me vehicle. Nice. What's a fire truck?
Fire truck.
What is it?
Vehicle.
It's a vehicle. Cool. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a dress?
Clothes.
Clothes. Nice. Here you go. Here's your sticker. Give me furniture. Nice job. What's a table?
Furniture.
Furniture. Perfect. Give me clothes. Good job. What's a jacket? What's a jacket? No, what's a jacket? No. Hey, hey. What's a jacket? No, what's a jacket? It's
It's taken.
What is it?
It's clothes.
It's clothes. So what's a jacket?
Clothes.
Clothes. Good job. Here, put Tigger on. Yeah, you're all done. You want your trains or bed?
Taste.
Okay, go play with your train.
Okay, I'll do the book. See you later.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I am Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. And our special guest is Wednesday. It's 10 o'clock. And it's the fabulous Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, and which means a board-certified behavior analyst. We're always thrilled to have you here. Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm in a bit of a daze today.
I know, it's we got lots of things going on here today, and we just rushed her in here and plugged her in. But it's it's great to have you here, and I know that we're going to talk in particular about ABA and how we start out. We have a plan, and we have something that we want to accomplish, and sometimes the first thing that we try works, and we go, woohoo! This is great. This is wonderful. But sometimes we're not getting the results that we want, and so. It's frustrating. It's an emotional time, and I think that some people go, well, then it just isn't working, and throw up their hands. Yeah. And that's not ever what we want to do, right?
No, it's not. Before you throw the towel in or give up on something, you need to have a look at what you're doing and what's going on, because it's possible that there's just some troubleshooting that can be done.
And sometimes it's the smallest thing, but I think, first we have to shore up our own executive function skills, right? These are things that eventually we teach our children in the executive functions curriculum, but the ability to look at something, see if you're making progress, if you're not making the progress that you want to make, identify what the problem is, and problem solve, and become flexible. These are all skills that we want to teach our children somewhere down the road. So first we have to start with ourselves and say, we have goals here. We have real goals that we want to work on with our children, and we want to see progress. And so it's important for us to graph, first of all.
Yeah, I was going to say, the first step is to even recognize when there's a problem.
Or when there's progress, too. I think that sometimes, as parents, we don't, sometimes we go, well, we're not making progress. I used to do this. I would go into clinic and I'd say, we're not making progress on this, that, or the other thing, and they would pull out the graph and say, but you are. It's not the amount of progress you want to see, but you are making progress.
Yeah, so I guess that's the same, as figuring out when there's actually a problem and when there isn't.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to make sure that you're tracking what you're doing and measuring it in some way, so that you can have some kind of objectivity to your decision about when it's working. Because we all know that if we just rely on our own subjectivity, we often catastrophize things, or think, like your case, where you just think something is, but not just think something isn't working when it is, but often we think something is working when it's not. And
yes.
That happens across the board, not just with our kids with autism, but with ourselves. And I know a lot of people who are convinced something's working, and I'm kind of looking from the outside at the long term of their behavior and thinking, I haven't really seen any difference over the last year. You're still in the same place as far as I can see. Yeah. But they're convinced that whatever it is they're doing once a week is doing something for them.
Right.
So you really have to make sure that you're measuring something that's meaningful. So make sure you're measuring something that will show progress and will show if the child's not progressing. That's very important, because sometimes you can be measuring something that just isn't going to show progress. Like maybe
Give me an example.
so maybe you're measuring something like the end goal when actually you should be measuring like smaller steps towards it.
Yeah.
So like what you're saying, Shannon, where you were convinced that your child wasn't learning something, and the supervisor's able to say, well, the kid, your kid's not here, but they're here, and that's halfway between here and here.
Exactly, and showing me the progress.
Yeah, so make sure that what you're tracking is going to show something that means something. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. One of the things that I'm working on at home right now, my son 2 years ago learned how to tie his own shoes in therapy, and it took a long time. It was something that we had great difficulties with, but he learned how to tie his own shoes. Great, fine, wonderful. And then, like 6 months later, I took him to buy shoes, and the pair of shoes that he wanted, guess what? They were Velcro. So I got talked into buying the Velcro shoes, right? And then the next pair of shoes was Velcro. So now here we are. It's 2.5 years later. He hasn't tied his shoe. I don't know what I was thinking. Like somebody needs to smack me in the head with a brick. Sometimes I miss things, right? And he wanted a pair of shoes this time that had a tie. And I said, great, because we should be getting back to that anyway. And we kind of hit this thing where he said, I don't remember how to do it. And I was like, what do you mean I don't remember how to do it? You did it. It's, we learned it. We spent a long time on this. You need it, So instead of getting frustrated, though, I decided to go back to, step one. And it's been amazing to me because the whole idea of chaining and doing a task analysis, and I really wanted to look at this and go, I want to be able to do this. And I'm moving very slow with it. But you know what? We're almost completely done, and he is finding it really reinforcing. I'm actually, walking my talk.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's so exciting because it was a battleground for a couple of days, and I said, I'm not going to let it be a battleground. So we started with that he just had to pull the shoes on and pull up the tongue, and that's all he had to do, and I would do the rest of it.
So I'm making sure, exactly, it's like looking at your expectations. So if your kid's not being successful at something, look at what your expectations are.
Yeah.
And maybe you need to break it down into smaller steps. And like Shannon's talking about the chaining idea of doing a task analysis. And even if you're already doing a task analysis, if your kid's not being successful, then maybe you need to break the steps down even further.
Exactly. And so my problem is that I've sort of arbitrarily said that each week we're going to add a new step. And I feel like I can do that because he already had the skill before. And if I wait for him, sometimes he'll deliberately not do something because he doesn't want to have to do it. So I've just said, on Monday we add the new step to it. So far that's working. But if it weren't working, then I would have the ability to change that. And I think that that's part of what we need to talk about today is that, if something isn't working, to not keep doing it because we said we were going to do it, but to change things up.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important not to change things too quickly.
Yeah.
So you definitely need to, as soon as you hit a brick wall, maybe it's not necessarily the best thing to freak out and change everything.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can take a while for behavior change to occur or for your child to be successful. And that's, again, it's about being flexible, because I can't give you like definite guidelines as to when to know when to change things and when to not. It really does depend on what you're teaching and the child.
Right.
But I run into quite commonly where, especially when it's something really emotive, like say it's a feeding issue or a sleeping issue or something like that, it's very common to freak out the minute that it seems like it's not working.
Yeah.
And want to change the procedures all up and to switch everything, but you really, and that's the minute when really you need to be consistent and keep going and keep going and keep going, and eventually the behavior will settle down. And we see that quite commonly.
So when do we know to change something?
Exactly.
Well, let's take a break and then we'll come back and sort that out. But take a break for just a minute, and we'll be back with Evelyn Gould, BCBA, talking about how to fix things when they're not working. Stick with us.
My name is is Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
What should a parent do to set up a room so that it's really friendly for learning?
Well, when you're starting to set up teaching sessions in your home, what you want to do is kind of decide where you're going to do this. And, you know, there's a few options. It's not set in stone one way or the other. What you want to think about is where is therapy going to be most effective for this child. A lot of families will designate an area in the child's room, or if they are fortunate enough to have extra space, they might designate a room where therapy might happen. If it's appropriate, some families will just kind of put a learning center or area in a part of their home. And it really just kind of depends on how and where your child is in the program about being able to inhibit certain distractions and so forth. So early on in the program, I find that it's probably most useful to have an area in their room or somewhere where you can really get away from a lot of distractions. So maybe in their room, and to start, that's definitely not where you want to stay. You want the child to be able to generalize their skills around the house and with everybody. But to start, it might be very helpful to have it in an area where you can minimize visual distractions. You don't have too much on the wall. Making sure you're not. There's a lot of things when you look at the home that when you take it from a child's perspective, or especially a child with autism, there's lots of distractions you don't think about. Looking for patterns. A lot of our kids get very distracted by the windows, the blinds, the light coming through at that either horizontal or vertical pattern can be very distracting. So making sure you're not facing their table directly towards the window might be something you have to take into consideration. Or the ceiling fan, is that going to just be too distracting in there, or something of that nature. I've had some families successfully put a work center in the family room that's adjacent to another part of the home, and we just had to be very careful as far as distractions. If that was too distracting, we did have an option to pull them back into a different room where that wasn't going to be the case.
Are there any specific types of furniture that they should have in the room?
There's definitely going to be some things that you for sure need. You're going to need somewhere for that child to sit and work. And depending on their age and where you're starting, that could be one of those little tyke tables with the little chairs. I've sat in those chairs for many years, so those are useful. A lot of families use those. For the bigger children, you're just going to have to find something that's appropriate to their size and height, so that they're comfortable. So you definitely want some kind of workspace, especially if you're working on motor skills or so forth. A lot of things that we're working on, it's not appropriate to do on the floor. You don't want to be working on writing or coloring on the floor. They're supposed to be at a table, so just to promote the right holding of the utensil and things like that. So you want a workspace, but you also want some play area. We're working on hopefully play skills and a lot of things like that, and we definitely don't want them sitting at the table for all of their sessions. So you want some play areas. I think some things that I have found helpful, especially for working on beginning level programming, where we're really trying to get these kiddos to ask us for things and what we call manding, asking for things that they want. Maybe putting some shelves or something where those really highly desired things are in sight but just out of reach, to help promote those opportunities for them to ask us for them. So that might be a really great way of doing that. You're definitely going to want some toys, but it really is going to depend on the toys are going to be dependent on the child. Where are their play skills? Can they already do puzzles? And a lot of that independent beginning play that has a definite beginning and end? Or are they going into more functional pretend play using cars and little people and so forth? So wherever their play skills are, you're going to want to find some objects or toys to facilitate that. Some other things that you want to think about is you're going to have a lot of materials or supplies that you're using for these lessons, and how much you have really will depend on what you're working on, but there are some definites. You're going to want some pens. You're going to have a program book that you will need to help guide your lessons each day, so you know what you're doing. Where is that child at in his lessons? You probably need lots of whiteout and erasers and such. So what we find is it's very helpful to have a designated area in the room, making sure that is out of the reach of the child so that they're not taking their own data on the side, and making sure we can put that up high and you can get to it as quickly when needed. When you start, you know where to get it. Everything's there. If you need supplies, you know where to get it really quickly, and it's all up there. And as far as programming wise too, you might have a bunch of picture cards or something like that you're using for certain programs. Really depends on what you find is best to organize yourself. Some people like to keep it within the book in that program area. For example, if you're working on teaching verbs or actions, you might have some action picture cards, and you could choose to put them in that section in the book so you know where to find them. Or you might have some kind of shoebox type thing that organizes them by area, that you can organize your materials that way, and then keeping them out of reach of the child within the area that you can get to pretty quickly.
And what about for a teacher? How can a teacher set up an area in the room that's really conducive to this kind of learning?
I think for teachers, some of the things are going to be similar. You want to minimize distractions. You know, what you're looking at. Sometimes you go into a classroom and you just see there's things, streamers flying, and everything's around the room, and you got to minimize that because it's going to be visually distracting and hard for them to concentrate. I had a little guy who was very sensitive to sound, and he happened to be sitting right under a vent, an AC vent, and he could not attend for anything. It must have sounded like Darth Vader was coming through. You know, like that's all he could hear, and we once we realized what that was, what was distracting him, we moved him and he was much better. So you have to really take in those considerations. What's going on in the environment? Is there any distractions that will get in the way of effective learning in this environment? So that's where I would start. Another thing we want to consider when for the teacher looking at the classroom is we want to make sure there's a designated area within that classroom that the child can be pulled over and to that workstation and be able to work without all the distractions of the classroom. So something where they've designated a special area that maybe it may have barriers or something in there to help minimize the distractions of the classroom, but that they have that opportunity to go and work one-on-one on these skill targets.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I am here right now with the wonderful and fabulous Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. And we've been talking about when we have great intentions and we start out doing something, and sometimes it appears it's not working. That isn't always the case. What it appears isn't always the case. But we talked a little bit about taking data and how important it is to take data. But if we think that something isn't working, what should we do?
So I mean, generally speaking, if you are doing a skill acquisition type thing, so you're teaching your kid a new skill, like putting their shoes on or something like that, I think you'll know fairly quickly from the data, and when you're working with your kid, my kid is just not going to get this. So you're feeling like you're hitting your head against a brick wall. And in the skill acquisition, that teaching kind of domain or whatever, then I think it's okay to change things reasonably quickly, or you're going to want to think about, do I need to break it down into smaller steps, like we just talked about. Am I providing enough help for my child? Am I prompting him well enough? Does he need more prompting? Or maybe he's stuck on a particular step. Maybe your prompting was too much. Maybe you need to think about feeding your prompting better. Maybe your reinforcement isn't good enough, so you need to look at your reward system. Is it worth it? I see that often. Like first of all, you need to make sure that the rewards you're giving are actually what the kid wants and what's motivating for them. So making sure you're assessing that a lot. And also I see maybe people asking their kids to do something that's really hard, and that the reward just isn't worth it. You know, I'm not going to work a full day's work for nothing. Well, you know, it depends what it is, but I'd like to say I was that good a person, but you know, I really have to be paid enough to live. So it's the same with our kids. Like, it has to be worth it for them. So think about that, and make sure like your kid isn't getting the rewards for free somewhere else. Like, I've seen a lot of the time where well-meaning granny gives a kid access to the reward that they're supposed to be working for. So make sure there's no one like undermining your good work. So all of those are types of things you want to think about. Are you like working on teaching at the right time? Is it really a good time trying to teach your kid how to put their shoes on when you're trying to get them out the door of school and you've got 3 other kids and you've got your bag and you've got all this other stuff going on? It's maybe not the best teaching moment. So thinking about the setting that you're teaching in and the context that you're teaching in, all of those types of things. Whereas when you're doing like a behavior reduction program, or you're putting in place, say, a program for teaching your kid to sleep at night or something like that, or toilet training, it might be that you need to wait it out a little bit longer to see what's actually happening and to see if the behavior is going to go down. Because I'm sure on the show you've talked about extinction bursts and stuff. So if you put in place for example, a planned ignoring intervention, you might have to wait it out for a little bit just before you see the behaviours that you're targeting going down. Because if you're taking away attention from a child whenever they've been getting attention in the past, they're going to suddenly be like, oh wait, I'm not getting attention, and they're going to try harder and harder and harder to get your attention while you're ignoring, and so the behaviour is going to get worse before it gets better. So it's important to stick to your plan and wait it out a bit to see what's happening. The same as I was working with a parent on a sleep intervention recently, and we had put in place a very structured sleep wake time and going to bed and all this kind of thing, and it didn't work. You know, it's not going to work immediately to change the child's behaviour, because the child has to get into a pattern and a rhythm with their sleep and get used to the new kind of boundaries and so on. And so it took a while before it started to work. But as a parent, I can understand that you kind of worry if after 3 days it's not working all of a sudden. But we just had to keep reassuring that parent to say, no, keep doing what you're doing a good job, just keep doing. We need to watch it over this week and see how it's going, and then we don't want to change things before we know whether this is actually working or not.
Right. You don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and some things take patience.
And if you keep changing things, then you never know what it is that isn't working or is working. And then, you know, even when you change things, you want to change one thing at a time, because the same thing, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you really want to know what it is that works and what isn't.
It's hard, though.
It's very hard.
There are so many different skills, and think of all the different places that our kid can be on the spectrum, and there's so many different skills, and each individual child, I think part of where the difficulty is that there's some skills that you introduce to your child, and your child gets them so quickly, and it raises that expectation that other things are going to be easy too, and then you run up against something that isn't, that the child needs some more support and some more time to get. So I think that there's a big thing about letting go of expectations and just looking at what is.
And you know, this is why people like myself are brought in to help with big problems, and why it's good to get help from someone if you're trying to tackle something that's very difficult, or a behaviour that's particularly difficult for you to cope with, whether that's emotionally, or, you know, your child's engaging in very aggressive or destructive behaviour or endangering themselves or something. It's really important to get someone like me come in and help you do the problem solving for you, because a BCBA who's experienced in autism in particular will be able to, first of all, problem solve well, and they should be really experienced in problem solving and getting it right, but also to support you and help you know what you're doing is right, and reassure you that keep doing what you're doing, it's okay, you're doing the right thing, this is going to get better. Because I think that's a really, really hard component, is actually just tolerating your own anxiety and knowing that what you're doing is okay and it's right and it's going to work.
This is why I always love to have you come in, Evelyn, because you bring it up in those kinds of terms, and I think that that's so important. Just when you were saying that, I was remembering, because, and I've shared on the show before, that my son had the regressive kind of autism, where we had skills and then he lost them. And one of the things that our supervisor had to deal with over and over and over again is if for instance, you know, now I'm at the point where when he didn't remember how to tie his shoes, I didn't panic and think, oh, this is the beginning of the end. But can I tell you that for a couple of years, anytime that he had gotten a skill and then didn't maintain it in the way that I thought he should, I was in full-on panic attack, saying, what's happening? Is he going to lose all, you know, and it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes. But I had to gain the faith and the trust that we were always going to get someplace further, and we were never going to shrink back to the beginning.
Absolutely, and like understanding that it's not all broken if it isn't working, and like feeling really disheartened or just feeling panicky or like not knowing what to do. If you have someone there who can tell you, oh, well, it's not working, but it's okay, we can try this, and this, and if that doesn't work, we'll try other things, and we're going to get there in the end. We're going to get there, and sometimes there is occasions where your supervisor or your BCBA might say, well, you know what, I think we'll come back to this.
Right.
But that's okay, because sometimes maybe the child just isn't ready to learn that skill, and you'll leave it for a year and you come back and then the kid masters it. I've seen that quite a bit, where, you know, you're targeting something and the kid just isn't ready to learn it, and then when you come back to it, it's so easy because they learn it very fast because they're ready. So having someone around to help you with that, because if you're trying to deal with stuff on your own, it's very, very hard you can't really be that person for yourself, or it's very difficult to be that person for yourself.
Yeah, because there is an emotional component to it.
Absolutely, always, and that can really interfere with your ability to kind of know what to do or think clearly or to persevere with dealing with something that's quite distressing.
Absolutely, absolutely. But what I love about you BCBA, you behavior people, is that there is no quit for you guys. You don't ever give up on something. It's always just a challenge to be overcome. And I think that's a great mindset for us as parents that we need to adopt too. That if we look at something and we see, okay, well, we tried this and this element, we're going to tweak this and we're going to do this, but knowing that you're going to keep working on it until you get the desired results. There's a peace in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always feel so much better if there's ever an issue going to you guys and saying, well, here's the thing, and I'm all, and you guys say, okay, well, here's what we're going to start with. Oh, right, there's a process, and you've worked on this before with kids, and you've gotten the desired result, and I just get so much more peace and confidence from that. And I never see you guys. I see sometimes that you guys are scratching your heads and saying, okay, well, here's what we do. Well, let's try this next. But you never get to the point where you guys don't give up. And I say that all the time. They don't give up on anybody, and we shouldn't give up on anybody either.
I know, and it's funny because we struggle with all these things ourselves, Shannon, and for me anyway, in my personal life, and also even as a supervisor or a clinician, sometimes I need to have a second person working with me to make me not freak out about a kid not progressing or not panic too soon about like, oh, do we need to change something? Like even I need that support sometimes because I get invested in wanting something to work a lot too, and especially when I'm supporting a parent who's distressed, sometimes I really want them to succeed, and so we all sometimes need an outside person to help to be able to look at it objectively and say, no, you need to, or try this or try that, or you need to wait, or whatever that is. But we never give up. Never, because our kids deserve the patience. I love how you always say the child's never wrong. No, we need to change things. It's almost like trying to figure out what the child's telling you. That's the problem. It's like the child's always trying to tell you something. So if the intervention's not working or you're not seeing what you want, you're really trying to look at what the kid's trying to tell you is wrong. Does that make sense? And then you can figure out how to fix it. Absolutely. And again, sometimes it's a very small thing, not a big thing. Let's take a break and then we'll come back and talk about what some of the small things are that we can change from time to time that make a big difference. So stick with us, back in just a few minutes.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope. They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks
for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're here right now with the wonderful and fabulous Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, and we're talking about when things don't work, because sometimes they don't. Do you know that Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go?
Yes.
And I love that they go, oh, the places you go, and you'll hit the high heights, and you'll be loved by everybody, except when you don't, because sometimes you won't, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of times things work, and it's easy, but sometimes it's not going to be.
Yeah, and also sometimes things can be working for a while and then all of a sudden they're not working and you don't know why.
Yes.
And Shannon and I were just talking in the break about me and my sore back. And prior to me going to Ireland, I had got a new desk. Like over the last year, I got a new desk and a new chair and I had back pain and figured out it was my desk eventually, and like got a new desk and all that, and everything was great. And then I came back from Ireland and all of a sudden the pain's back. And I was, I couldn't figure out, well, I was thinking, why is this not, what's going on? And I knew, first of all, I had to think about, well, what has changed? And that's what you should be thinking about when something suddenly isn't working. What is different? And so for me, they were environmental things that were going on. I was thinking, right, well, I changed offices, so I have a different desk and a different chair, but also I had lent my car to someone when I was away, and she's smaller than me, so she quite probably had changed the seat position. So being a human being, which is like all of you, I didn't do what a behavior analyst should have done, and I started changing everything all at once. So I tried to fix my desk, I tried to change my chair, then I went back to the chair and put all various contraptions on my chair, tried to change the height, took the arms off, did all that, as well as at the same time changing my car seat, back, forth, up, down, changing it every day, fiddling with everything, and then I was still having the back pain, and then I was thinking the other day, you know what, Evelyn, you really need to be a behavior analyst about this and only change one thing at a time, and then not be like, oh, one day later it's still not working, I still got pain, and then change something else. I need to change one thing at a time. I need to leave it for a week and see if it helps. If it doesn't, then I can change one other thing. Leave it for a week and see if it helps. And also I need to be taking data on whether my back's hurting and how much it's hurting each day to see whether there is a change. And I didn't do any of those things to start with. I just went crazy and panicked and started changing everything up and changing it every day.
But we're all human.
Exactly.
And I say all the time, I love to go back to the basics of ABA because after all this time, you would think that I would know all these things that I talk about, but in the moment, I have to be reminded.
Exactly.
Because we react instinctively, and I think we get uncomfortable and go, I want something to change, so I'm going to do something to change it.
And Shannon, I've been doing this a long time and supposed to be an expert, and I panicked and did everything wrong initially. So you're not alone in that.
Well, I think it's good for all of us to know it and say, okay, that's our go-to, but we don't have to. And if our end goal is the results, when we catch ourselves at some point doing these things, we can go, oh, okay, let's back it up. And it's not like the opportunity is gone. It's not like you can't do that now. Take the data on it and arrange one thing at a time. And I think, that's one of the wonderful things. I used to teach in the classroom, and one of the things that people would frequently, we would remind ourselves and remind each other, is that every week there's a new Monday. And you can start something new every single Monday. So something wasn't working last week. There's always that opportunity. It's not like, oh, darn, we missed it, it's over, we're never going to be able to teach tying shoes now. It isn't like that. We can tweak things, but sometimes it's just a small thing that has to be tweaked.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you can, so even with my back example, I may find once I start doing this properly that there's just one thing that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And so with our kids as well, sometimes it's just a small thing, like for example, what we talked about before, maybe you just are expecting too much.
Yeah.
And and that could mean that you need to break things down, or perhaps you're trying to target the skill in kind of an unrealistic expectation, with an unrealistic expectation in terms of the environment. Maybe your kid is 2 and it's just not realistically, and they have certain deficits, and it's not realistic to expect them to be able to learn how to sit quietly when you're in the doctor's room for like 3 hours and there's like other kids and people screaming.
Absolutely.
It's just not going to happen, and you're maybe distracted by your other kid and you can't like prompt or do all the things you need to do. So just really looking at what you're expecting of your child
and
whether
be
that's
realistic,
and then maybe you need to just knock it down a notch. And then also perhaps you're not providing enough help. Perhaps you're not modeling the behavior or prompting your child enough. Maybe they need a little bit more help to be successful.
Yeah.
And then they need more reinforcement. So it's really important to make sure as well that you're presenting enough opportunities for your child to get rewarded.
Yeah.
If you're only practicing this skill once a day, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to learn it than if you're practicing it multiple times a day. And if you're providing enough prompting and reinforcement, then they're going to learn a lot faster than if they're struggling around just once a day and you're not getting any help. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense.
And then making sure, like, little things like, well, is what you're rewarding, is what you're using as a reward actually motivating your kid?
Yeah.
We can often fall into a pattern with rewards and just assuming that, oh, the kid liked this at the start, this is going to remain to be the reward for the whole thing, or it's going to be reinforcing throughout the whole teaching procedure or behavior management procedure. And kids' motivation, like our own, changes all the time, and sometimes we really want things and sometimes we want them less, and sometimes we want this thing for a week and then next week our reinforcement changes, or even on an hourly basis. So it's very important to just do assessments every day. Maybe have like a bank of things that your kid can choose from, and maybe have them choose before you start working on the skill, so you know it's motivating to them.
Yeah, doing those regular preference assessments. I think we all, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but I hear, for myself it's like this, and I hear it from a lot of different parents. I don't want to take data. I really just don't want to. It seems unnatural to me. It's not my kind of thing. And I really want to streamline everything. So I want to go to those fail-safe, the thing that I'm pretty sure that he finds reinforcing. And sometimes I just won't take the time to say, and at this point I can ask him, what do you want to work for? It would take a second.
Yeah.
And when I do, I'm frequently surprised that he'll say something, and I would have picked something completely different if I was just in the business of assuming, which I do from time to time. I cop to that. But really important, if we want to be effective, to do regular preference assessments. It doesn't have to be hard, right?
No, it doesn't. You can just pick like 4 things and just put them out in front of your child and see which one they gravitate towards. It'd be that simple. It doesn't have to be you asking them a million questions.
Right.
It's just seeing what they gravitate towards. And I think as well with the reinforcers, remember that like free access, it kind of decreases the motivation. So, if I'm motivated for chocolate cake and someone wants me to work on a paper, something a really hard thing, and they say they're going to buy me a piece of chocolate cake, if I have access to chocolate cake right before already, I'll be like, I don't care, I've already had my piece of chocolate cake. Or if I know I can get it, just go to the fridge and get a piece without doing any work, then obviously I'm not going to really be motivated to work for that piece of chocolate cake. So thinking about the availability of what you're offering, if your kid loves TV but they're allowed to watch TV all the time, then they're going to be thinking, well, why should I have to work for this, because I get it anyway. I'm not saying that you should take things away. I think it's better to not necessarily take away privileges that the kid already has, but you want to add on or just keep something reserved for working on certain things.
And we can, and I'm the person who's guiltiest of this, but I know when I do it right, it isn't that I take away, because video games is very reinforcing for my child, but I can get into a mode. We just had a break and he got to play way too many video games. I should be taken away to jail. And 30 lashes with a wet noodle. And I caught myself like on the Wednesday and was like, oh, you know, I'm allowed. And instead of saying, well, we're just not going to play video games today, what I did was found a bunch of other things to do and didn't mention it to him. So that a couple of days went by, and then it occurred to him, and he was like, I haven't had any time to play video games. I was like, wow, we just have been so busy.
Yeah, or like if you can't, if you aren't able to restrict video games because say you're working on behavior or transitioning or something, and that's going to cause massive problems. Just removing a kid's major reinforcer is going to cause a whole bunch of other issues. Think about a way that you can manipulate that reward. So perhaps it's keeping a particular video game, like not restricting their video time or their TV time, or just keeping a particular DVD or a particular video game aside for whatever it is you want to work on. That can be very effective. So you're not creating massive problems for yourself.
But again, we don't want to tell the child, oh, we're keeping this one over here so that you're working for it. You just make it unavailable.
Yeah, you just
no big discussion. And it comes out for special occasions, but it doesn't have to be a thing to be talked about.
Right, because your reinforcers need to be doable. There's no point, you know, you've got to pick something that's not going to cause you massive problems and is easy to administer. That's the other thing. Make sure that what you're offering is easy for you to give them, and that you can provide it immediately, that your kid does whatever it is you want them to do. You know, it's not going to be very effective if you ask your kid to tie their shoes and then you're like, yay, brilliant job, and then you run off and like you're rummaging around looking for whatever it is, and in the meantime the kid's like throwing things on the floor and like ran around, done laps around on the sofa or whatever, like, and then you come back and give them a video game because you basically just reinforced all those other things. You know, so it's got to be easy to administer and that you can give it to them right away. So be ready.
Yeah, be ready. Okay, let's take another little break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Evelyn to talk to us about reinforcing ourselves through these really difficult times when things aren't working, how we can, because otherwise we get to the point where we don't want to do it anymore, right? And we have to make it reinforcing for ourselves. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. Skills was designed to equip educators of children with autism everything they'll need to get their students on the right track towards recovery. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest during this hour is Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. Those kinds of people that we're always talking about, that when you need help and support, they're really beneficial to consult with so that you can look at the function of behavior, design a plan. We've been talking about when things aren't working. We have the best intentions, and you're working with a child, you've got a target, you've come up with an intervention, a teaching plan that you're going to teach something, or diminish something, and sometimes it's not working and you hit a roadblock. And Evelyn's given us some really good ideas of what to do and what to look at, how not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I asked her to come back for one more segment to talk with us very quickly about how we keep this process reinforcing for ourselves as parents, because we won't do it unless it's reinforcing for us too.
It's very, very hard. And especially when you're doing something that's designed to reduce problem behavior, ultimately the goal is that the kid won't do this problem behavior anymore, and that is very reinforcing. So once you get to that point, it's very reinforcing. But the journey to get there can be very, very difficult. Yeah. And I think it's really important to having someone to support you and support you through it, at least initially when you're just starting to deal with problems. I mean, later on down the line, when you're getting your wings and you're able to go off and do your own problem solving, and you're confident in dealing with problem behaviors because you've already had support dealing with them in the beginning, so they're going to work. But at the start, it's very, very hard, and you're going to have to, behaviors tend to get worse before they get better. Yeah. So I think having a support there, and whether that, a BCBA is ideal, like someone who knows, and making sure that that person gives you the support that you need. And I don't, I feel that for most parents, when you're dealing with a very difficult behavior and someone gives you a behavior intervention plan, it's not very helpful for them just to give it to you and then disappear and expect you to be able to do it. That's not a good sign. No. That person who designs your plan for you should be there with you, holding your hand through it. And they may not be able to be in your home, but I think having a contact, like being able to contact them on a daily basis and having that person check in with you. Yeah. And again, from a BCBA point of view, if a parent isn't able to, is finding it really hard to implement something I've asked them, that's a place where I go to the problem-solving mode as well, and I want to know, well, what's difficult about this? Why can they not do it? So make sure that you have someone who's willing to work with you and give you small steps. Again, break it down and give it small steps so that you do feel able to do it. And then you yourself, trying to find ways to motivate yourself. It's very hard.
It is hard.
It is very hard.
But we can't give up on ourselves either.
No,
we can't give up on our child, can't give up on ourselves.
I think taking a deep breath and trying trying to step outside of it and look at the bigger picture and where you're wanting to go, and trying to, you know, see the journey, see where you're trying to get to, and how much better things will be once you get there.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to go. It's very hard.
It is hard, and I think, you know, just like our kids, we're all different, and different things motivate us. And I've said before that, you know, I always had a picture in my head that was so strong for me that, you know, that, and it doesn't make sense entirely, but that my child in a cap and gown, graduating from high school, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, I don't know. No, I'm going to sneeze more. Excuse me, the idea of him being in a cap and gown, graduating from high school, getting ready to go off to college, and you don't go right from high school graduation to college, but this was my vision that kept me going through a lot of things, and me being able to look him in the eye and tell him how proud I was of him, and to be able to know in my heart and be able to say to him, we did absolutely everything that we could so that you could get to this day. And I got to tell you that on my worst day, when things weren't working, that was the thing that I would go, well, we'll find a way to make it work. Well, we will make this work, because you know, that was such a strong thing. That's not going to be the thing for somebody else, but you got to find your thing, your picture in your head.
Find your own reinforcers. Like, you've got to find your own motivation and be your own best friend.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the hardest thing to do, but being compassionate and towards yourself, and giving yourself all the things that you want other people to give you that would make you feel better. You can actually give those to yourself.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think even the little things, how you find of being kind and gentle with yourself and forgiving of yourself, and the fact that you're not going to be perfect on every day, at every single moment, and you always give us permission to not be perfect every single moment. It's why I gravitate towards you, so I can forgive myself for not knowing it all, not being able to implement it all. Really, really important stuff, and to lean on whoever you have to lean on.
Yeah, to ask for what you need as well, but then knowing how to try and get your own needs met yourself, like giving yourself what you need.
Yeah. Well, we have to be the models. We want to give our children functional communication skills to ask for what they want, but we have to be able to do it as well. Our word for the day was manding, and we can mand ourselves and ask for the things. I find my husband and I would always tag team that if somebody was with my son and he was exhibiting some challenging behavior, it was, you know, it was like tag out, and the other person could come in, and so somebody could get a break for a couple of minutes. But I needed to get to the point where I could say that to my husband, and we had that phrase, tag out, I need a break, and the other person knows if somebody says that, boy, you know, jump in. But you got to ask for it sometimes.
Yeah, and you know, it's important to know that you can get support even if you are by yourself and you're out in the middle of nowhere, because we do support, I mean, I support some people who are in the middle of nowhere doing this themselves. You can find people, like Shannon is here no matter where in the world you are, and she's here to support you, so you can find support no matter what.
Yes, you can even tweet me and say, I'm having a bad day. And I'll be happy to tweet you back and say, breathe, it's going to be okay, you're going to survive this and more. You can do it. It's quite the journey, I have to say, and even though there are some really bad days, you will be so glad that you stuck it out. You really will. That would be an amazing thing. We have to take a break and we have to say goodbye to you, because it's almost time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. But thank you so much. It's always so wonderful when you're with us, and we'll look forward to you next Wednesday. Stick with us. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspot Jackson's going to be here, and we've got some really exciting things to talk about. So don't go away.
Hi, I'm Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
Playdates are so hard with kids on the spectrum. What kinds of things would you recommend to get a really good playdate?
So you want to prepare, just trying to find things that, one, your child's going to be successful with, and two, things that they'll both enjoy. You want to look for things that they have to do together. You don't want necessarily this play date to be, a period of time where there's isolated play happening. It kind of defeats the purpose of that. You can do isolated play alone in your sessions. You're looking for some interactive play during this play date, or some generalization of the skills that your kid has been working on.
Do you have any suggestions for requesting a play date? Like who we should ask? What type of child?
Playdates are really interesting. There's a lot of things that go into that you want to think about when you're doing a playdate. Sometimes there are really great kids who don't really necessarily make great playdates, and there's just lots of reasons for that. It depends on what type of kid you have and what you're trying to work on, and then what peer is going to best complement that and allow you to do what you need to do in a playdate. What I have found is sometimes you need a kid who's more open and flexible and willing to do the things that you want to do. If they're a little too independent or too set in their ways about doing what they had on their agenda, it kind of hinders what you need to accomplish in your play date. So sometimes you have going in, you think, oh, this is going to be a great kid. They play on the playground. He really likes her or him. This is going to be a really good thing for him. And then you get them into the house for the play date, and 10 minutes into it, you realize there's no way the peer is going to do what you want them to do or need them to do. So you just kind of chalk it up and you note to yourself, okay, not the best play date, and then you have a better idea of what you're looking for in the next kid. I think that you're going to want someone who's a child who's open and flexible and willing to go with the flow, patient, because maybe you're asking them to repeat what they've said a few times so that our child has opportunity to respond to peers, and you're getting an opportunity in a smaller environment to slow things down for a second for them so that they have an opportunity to hear what the peer said and respond. And you may be asking the friend to can you say that again? I don't think he heard you. You definitely need a peer who's willing to do that. I've been told no by kids. No, I'm not going to do that. And so when you have that happen, you just realize, okay, this isn't the best fit, and you just move on and you find a better fit for your child.
What would you recommend that we say to other parents about our child before a play date?
I think that's going to depend on your child and the severity of the deficits that you have that you're working on at that point, and the parents that you're dealing with. There's lots of different personalities that we encounter in working with different families and so forth. I think that honesty is probably the best policy, but that doesn't mean you have to divulge every little detail about your child and what you're working on. You could give them, if it was appropriate, something general, just like, my child has some delays in language and social, and we have found that by doing these play dates, it's been really helpful in helping them improve on these areas. If there's some deficits that are more probably obvious and to the parent, you might need to get into some more specifics about why there's an adult in there facilitating that and so forth. But I think being honest, but you don't have to divulge every little detail. But I think they have a right to know why there's another person in there, if there's someone else in there besides yourself facilitating.
What kind of strategies are good for getting children to play together instead of playing side by side?
Things that have turn-taking opportunities with them. If they're boys and they're into sports, maybe, tossing a ball back and forth, if that's something your child has been working on. You want to kind of stay away from just playing on the playscape, for example, and they're both on the swings, but no one's talking, and they're just kind of hanging out next to each other, but they're not really doing a whole lot, unless that happens to be where you're starting. Maybe your first target in these play dates is parallel play, and if that's the case, then that might be okay. Otherwise, you're going to want to look for some more interactive activities that they can play.
What about after the play date? What kinds of things should we do after a play date?
I think no matter what we're doing with our kids, it's always a good idea to stop and reflect. Okay, how did that go? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Did we hit the targets we were supposed to work on? If not, why? Was it because I didn't plan the activities correctly, or was it like, hey, I didn't realize, but he's actually doing much better with that than I thought, and so maybe that wasn't the right target. It just kind of, once he got the opportunity, it happened more than you thought it was going to be. You never know. You're just making a plan, and you implement it the best you can, and then you stop. After it's done, you should reflect and go, how did that go? Is there anything I could have done different? The activities were wrong. Was the play date the right kind of kid that I needed for this to happen? Was it too long? Was it perfect? Did they need a snack and I ran them into the ground with all these activities I structured? It could be something like that. So I always think it's a good idea to take a step back and reflect. Reinforce the child for what you thought was great, right after, so it's fresh in their mind. Oh, that was really great. I liked the way you played with Sally outside. That was really nice. If they're at a more advanced level in their treatment program, you could, talk about some of the things and have them identify what they liked and so forth. Early on, you're probably just going to reinforce them, and then you take note of what you might need to do differently.
How do you deal with challenging behavior on a play date?
Well, that could go two ways. I have definitely been in a situation where there's challenging behavior on my child's part, and there's also been situations where it wasn't my child. Our play date was having some difficulties, and so I think there's two different things we could talk about. First, looking at our child, you probably have some ideas of what behavioral challenges might pop up during those situations, so you should kind of have an idea going in. Okay, if this gets too stressful and he starts to do this, what is going to be your plan? I think you're going to try to de-escalate that if you can. If you see the signs coming, or whoever's facilitating this play date sees that he's starting to get a little fidgety and agitated, and that generally happens before a tantrum or something of that nature, then you're going to try to de-escalate and see if you can calm him down so that it doesn't turn into a full-blown tantrum or meltdown in front of their peers. And that's the last thing we want, is for, we're trying to build social relationships here, so we don't want that happening. If it's just not going to happen and that escalates to a point where you can't calm them down in that situation, I think the best thing you can do is probably have the parent or whoever, another person, handle the child that's having the difficulty, our child, and then distract the peer who's there at that point. Like, oh, he's going to take a moment to make himself feel better, and let's keep playing. Oh, do you like this game? This is a really fun game. Let's see what we can do here. And just try to distract him from that moment, and let our child get a moment to kind of just regroup and pull himself back together. And as far as the other child, that poses some difficulties. When the peer comes and isn't having a great time, you think you just need to take it one step at a time, take a step back, do what you can to de-escalate and redirect that behavior to something hopefully that's usable and helpful during the play date. And if not, then you go to plan B, you write out the play date and hopefully go to something else, and just note to yourself that maybe that's not the best play date for the future.
Welcome, everyone, to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and we have a lot to talk about today.
We have a lot to talk about.
Autism Awareness Month continues with lots of things breaking in the news, lots of studies coming out, and
it's a little overwhelming how much stuff is coming out.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to determine when I read these things, I'm always careful to read how big the percentage is that they are studying, and because a lot of this big brouhaha in the news about things like overweight mothers during pregnancy, older fathers, but then when you read the fine print, it's a much different picture. A much different picture
than what we're seeing in the media.
So we're trying to give you the real story, and we'll try to give you actually percentages here and what stage these studies are in, because a lot of these studies are years away from being implemented as well into the general public.
I think it's important to talk about it, but we have to take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt and a little bit of understanding that it is, we're starting to see possible correlations between things. That is not an answer. That's a possible, that raises more questions, and more questions is good.
Right, I agree.
But
so anyway, one of the studies that was really interesting to me, Shannon, was that artificial intelligence is providing easy autism diagnosis in minutes. And I thought this was particularly interesting. It's from the Harvard Medical School. And using artificial intelligence, which is basically computers, is the bottom line. What they're doing is they're saying it's a new way to accurately detect autism in minutes, which sounds astounding to me.
It does.
And that basically it's machine learning algorithms. Is that the correct pronunciation for all these math geniuses out there? And what they're doing is they're taking a video, and then there's a question. They found that when applying algorithms towards patients who'd previously been diagnosed using the ADOS system, the ADOS, the Autism Diagnostic Interview Observation Schedule, which takes hours to administer. That 8 out of the 29 items contained in the first module of the exam were able to classify autism with 100% accuracy, and also a short observational video of the child to obtain a diagnosis.
Yeah. So what I love about it is that they're finding ways to streamline.
Yes.
And that so far they're seeing that it's pretty effective. I love that a large portion of the test is being streamlined into 93 different questions that can be answered.
Right.
There is still that human element that they have to look at a videotape of the child instead of that 3-hour-long interview.
Well, they're saying it would eliminate human error, provide a faster diagnosis process, and allowing families a better chance at receiving early intervention that's so critical, as we know. The reason this was particularly interesting to me was that I was put off by my pediatrician saying boys are late talkers and boys have tantrums because they are late talkers and it's frustration. Then at 3, my son, 3 and a half, received a diagnosis from a school district, I won't say which district, psychologist. And after visiting us at home, after visiting him in a preschool setting, and after visiting him at a Barnes & Noble, she arrived at a PDD-NOS diagnosis. Now, had I had the criteria myself, I could have diagnosed him with moderate autism because he met all 3 areas, impairment in social communication, language, and he had repetitive behaviors in all 3. Now, not quite a year after that, he was diagnosed by the regional center with moderate autism, meeting all 3 criteria. So then I said, well, how in the heck did he get diagnosed with 2 very different diagnoses by people that are supposedly very well trained in this?
Yeah.
And that concerns me.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I had said to you is that I'm cynical, so I'm going to say that up front, but I think it's really important that whenever somebody is diagnosing your child, that you know what stake they have in it. That if it's, and I'm going to be divisive here and say that for a school district, they have, especially in this economy, they have few dollars, and the more children that are diagnosed, the less dollars that they have to spend on other things. So there is going to be pressure put on some people to not diagnose as many children, because if they're diagnosed, then they need services. And I don't ever want my child's decision about what services he gets driven by money. And I don't think
I was very naive in those days.
We all have been naive.
I just assumed that everybody had the best interest of my son Wyatt at heart, and that was their primary concern. And of course I was relieved when he got a diagnosis of PDD-NOS. And I believe that because so much at that time the parent questionnaire was a big part of it. And I believe I glossed over a lot of his symptoms because I was hoping for a better diagnosis, which was a disservice because my son ended up getting, by now, by today's standards, late intervention in terms of any ABA. He got it when he was almost 5.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all have that fear. When we have to fill out the part of the questionnaire ourselves, we have people come in and talk about assessments on a regular basis, and I'm always expressing, it's hard because we want to be positive, but we don't want to, short sale, and we don't, and she said, it is designed in such a way that it looks for those kinds of things as well. So we should all forgive ourselves that what we answer, that, so it was not in any way your fault. You can forgive yourself for that.
I've done that.
But but I think that something like this study gives us hope for something that can streamline so more kids can get treatment quicker. But I do think that we still need to listen to our own instincts. I'm worried for the parent who takes their child somewhere down the line and this test spits out and says, didn't qualify, and the parent goes, but in my gut, I still feel like something's wrong. So I still think that we're going to have to follow up and follow our gut no matter what. If we can streamline it and get services faster, yippee. But are we ever going to get something that's exact? I don't know.
I also think that anytime we see Harvard Medical School, we go, well, okay, they know. And you know what? A mother's gut is more important than any institution.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Amen to that. Another study that I was really interested in, as we got these new numbers from the CDC, and we see that the disparity between the boys and the girls, that number just keeps growing.
People ask me that Every day. Why more boys? Why more boys? Can you break it down for us?
Well, and there's one new study that has some suggestions in one area of autism. I like to remind everybody that we can't look at it as autism. It's autism. It has to be autisms. There's so many different places on the spectrum. So this study is showing with one particular gene, and it's in the shank. They call it the shank 1.
Does that stand for anything here?
I have no idea what that stands for. But the shank1 gene, that in some cases of autism, they're seeing that there is an issue with the shank1 gene. And that in that shank1 gene part of autism, that there is a huge difference between the boys who show up with autism and the girls, and they're starting to believe that there is some element, some biochemical element in the girls that is protecting them from having this mutation. And if that's
isn't there something to do with proteins?
Yeah, well, it's the proteins are coded in a certain way, and that something happens with the proteins, and there is a mutation in the boys with the shank1 gene.
That is more common and prevalent than in girls. A mutation in the gene. Okay, so when the next time somebody asks me, because, by the way, I'm an autism advocate and activist. I am not a scientist. I am not a doctor, and neither are you. We're both activists and advocates, and
asking the same questions that you
asking the same questions and trying to get information out there. But the next time somebody asks me why more boys than girls, we believe it's because studies have shown there's a genetic mutation that affects more boys than girls.
Well,
is
you
that
got to
the
be careful because this is just one element, and they're starting to look at that. They don't have an answer yet. And this is just one element. This isn't. Not all children with autism have this genetic mutation. So it's not going to be across the board. But what's exciting about this is that for this element of autism, for people who do have the shank1 mutation, and they're seeing that there is a genetic component to it, that there's prevalence across families, more likely to happen. If they can figure out what the protection is in the girls that doesn't allow for the mutation to happen, then they might be able to replicate that and potentially be able to help boys down the line, so that there might be a time when you can have your child genetically tested, see that there is the prevalence in your family for this shank1 mutation, and that there might be perhaps a vaccination or something that your boy can get that will protect them against the mutation. That is so far down the line.
But once again, a way of predicting, a way of possibly treating early so it doesn't happen.
Potentially. Good. So interesting, but again, just raising more questions, no answers.
Another study that I thought was particularly interesting was that mineral deficiencies can be affected by dietary factors that then affect the way the body detoxifies. Now, this is this is talked about a lot in the biomedical community, about toxins and how they interact with foods and chemicals, how they interact with detoxifying, which I think is called methylation. And this study said that things like even consumption of high fructose corn syrup is linked to the dietary loss of zinc, which then interferes with the detoxification of heavy metals. So in other words, mercury in the body, if there's too much high fructose corn syrup in the diet, then that child may have a particular difficulty in detoxifying from heavy metals and other toxins.
And they specifically cited mercury and pesticides. And I think that this is really interesting because we talk a lot on the show about how important it is to get our children healthy and to have their diet be healthy, because it's going to set them up for more success no matter what you're doing.
No matter what you're doing, and whether your child's on the spectrum or not. I mean, we've got so many disorders out there affecting children. Childhood obesity, of course, diabetes, juvenile diabetes, along with autism. A healthy diet cannot harm, it can only benefit your child. And getting rid of food dyes, toxins, and certain things in the diet, every doctor will tell you will only benefit your child, and especially those with autism. So the bottom line on this is factors like nutrition and exposure to toxic chemicals are cumulative and can affect normal development. They're also saying that high fructose corn syrup can impact levels of other beneficial minerals, including calcium. So a lot in this study that I thought was really, really good information, and that it was at Northeastern University, a co-author of the study, and I think that we all should look at. And this, you know, there was some very, very this was not a fringe study, I want people to know. This was done by, the study's lead author was a former Food and Drug Administration toxicologist. And, you know, this was at Northwestern. And I think a very, very intensive study that we should all be aware of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can take this information, and even if we make small changes, it could have huge effects for our children.
Yeah. You know, one of the best food books out there had something in it that said, don't eat it if your grandmother wouldn't recognize it.
There you go. Like
and
that.
How much do we eat that our grandmother wouldn't recognize?
Well, truly.
Right.
Truly.
Right.
So really important.
And it can be a problem getting our kids to eat these foods. You know, my son has a lot of sensory issues. Wyatt doesn't like any fruits. It took us a long time to get him into vegetables. But a good behavior therapy program can get your child to eat the vegetables and fruits they are not willing to eat because of sensory and other. We know our kids are notoriously picky eaters, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we talk about that a lot on the,
I know
show
you do.
about eating healthy.
So that's important.
And we need to be doing it as well. We need to model that behavior.
Right.
We need to be eating our fruits and veggies.
Okay.
We got to take a break, and we have a wonderful guest who's going to be with us. We're going to be. I told them earlier that we're going to be talking about some apps for autism.
I met this young woman at an autism conference, and I was very intrigued with her app that she created. After years of working, she has worked with children on the spectrum for many years, and she's a delightful young lady who very bright and very, very passionate about helping our kids. So we're very excited to have her.
So we're going to have Kim Scott when we come back. Stick with us, and we're going to talk apps for autism.
Okay,
back in a minute.
Very good.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. Card e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. Card e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz. And once you pass that quiz, you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use Card e-learning.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
I'm Shannon Penrod.
And we have a delightful young woman with us that I was lucky enough to meet at a recent autism conference.
Oh, wonderful. Kim Scott, welcome to our show. We're so thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today.
Yeah. And Kim, tell us about just your experience in the field of autism, first of all.
Sure. Well, I started studying speech pathology about 16 years ago, and my first client had severe autism. And I just found it to be a fascinating field, as a challenge to me, and I loved working with autism. And throughout my years, I worked in hospitals, schools, private practice. And here I am today, still working with autism.
So how did you get the idea to make an app?
Well, we've been using, I'm sure you're familiar with Boardmaker and PEX for so many years.
PEX,
we've used that. And we have to go to the computer and use Boardmaker, type out pictures, print them out, laminate, Velcro, and make these for each of our clients. It was really time consuming. So this past year I was at a school district for 2 months consulting there. And when I went in, I noticed that all of the students, most of the students were nonverbal, and only one had a communication system. And so I saw there was a big problem there. They weren't able to access their communication. So that's when I suggested that the district use iPads and some technology that we can use. One student who had cerebral palsy, she had a Dynabox, which was a 5-pound device that was about $10,000. But the other students didn't have anything, and this was even difficult for her to use because the battery would die.
Oh, yeah.
Teachers didn't know how to modify it. We couldn't add pictures to it. It was just sort of there.
Yeah.
So basically, do you feel like the school systems, they weren't keeping up with the technology? In other words, they didn't have that ability?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you saw, hey, I could create something here, huh?
I did, and I suggested, let's get the iPad. We had 5 families that were in mediation. They were unhappy with the district. They were suing the district. And I said, they need communication systems. Let's buy the iPad and save you guys some money.
Yeah.
And so that process would have taken a year or 2 for them to get the funds for the iPad. By that time, we wasted a year or 2 with our students, which we don't have that kind of time.
No, we don't.
Day is so critical. So I went out and bought an iPad myself. And I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what it's like. And I purchased every app out there. And it was amazing, revolutionary, what our kids could do, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And even my student with cerebral palsy, she wanted to use the iPad, not her big machine.
Yeah, because not only that, you know, Kim, I think the iPad gives them a sense of being like other kids, right? I mean, doesn't it?
It's cool, it's fun, and it's visually stimulating, it's motivating, and that's what gets our kids to communicate. They don't want to communicate unless there's something that they really enjoy.
Absolutely.
And they want to use. So I bought all the apps out there, and some apps, about $200 apps, but I still wanted to get them. And they were working for a couple of my students, but there were so many factors that were playing into these apps that weren't working.
Okay, what did you think wasn't working and that you have incorporated into Panda Pal?
Yeah.
What wasn't working was that the screen was so sensitive. So a lot of our students have fine motor issues,
right?
Where they might need a little prompt to touch and release. These apps were just touch, touch, touch. So I'd have a sentence that had 20 words on it where they just really were going to put 2 or 3 together. And I didn't know what they were trying to communicate. I didn't know if they really meant this or that because they were touching the screen because they wanted to touch the icons.
Right.
So I needed a system where they could, I would know what they're communicating. So somehow, how could we make it so they're touching and holding, and we know this is what they want.
Okay.
So I designed a touch and hold for that. It's a unique feature that you can turn it on and off. So if once your kids develop past that, you could turn it off and they could whiz right through it.
Okay.
But for our early language learners, they need a system that they could use. The iPad was sort of this. I was teaching them to navigate through a system as opposed to communicate. I was teaching them how to just touch once, and they were getting a little frustrated. So it was, I saw that there was a need for that, and I couldn't.
So you
use
really
it
made it more user-friendly for our kids.
For our
at the beginning
kids.
Stage.
Exactly.
Okay.
That was one. The other thing I designed was data collection, because when you see they start using it, you go, oh my gosh, they just made a sentence. I want to go tell mom. I want to tell the teacher. And you're writing, and I'm taking notes as they're communicating to me, and that sentence is gone. Now we're moving on, and you'll see over 3 or 4 weeks they're going to make so much progress. They all do. And how do you take data? How can you share
wait a minute,
that?
I want to go back to something. They make so much progress. They all do. You really feel that way?
Yeah. With
That's so
my
great.
students, and I've used my app with so many of my students, and they've all made progress with it.
That's
if
incredible.
It's just touching one picture for me, that's fine.
That's progress. Progress is progress, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, so can you show us a few things on Panda Pal? I don't know whether Emily can. We were talking about whether we could get it directly on the screen or whether we can just show it here.
Let's show us.
Let's try.
And we'll turn it around to a camera and see if we can show people at home what.
Let's see. So here is the screen.
Okay.
And
we'll turn it.
Turn it around. Yeah, we
There
can
we go.
see it
We
on
can see it
camera.
totally fine.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
perfect.
Is it a little glare? Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So the homepage comes with categories.
Okay.
And so in language we have categories. There's different situations, different contexts where we have to use words. So this is just, and you can add as many as you want to this page.
So we can customize.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
It's like a template, really.
Right.
So I made this for the majority of the kids I work with. They tend to have similar needs. They need help in the bathroom, getting dressed in the morning, eating snacks, lunch, dinner, locations on the go at school, and in speech therapy as well. Also added some feelings on here. So these are just sort of samples that a speech therapist developed.
Based on your knowledge of working with families and what families need to get their kids functioning, higher functioning in ways, tools that can help them. Because I see bathroom, clothing, comment, family, favorites, feelings, food, home, let's go, park, school, speech. So these are all areas that the average child and family would need to have access to help their children see a schedule and communicate.
That's correct. And also as a speech therapist, I put my students on here, so they have their own categories. Which I took off, so we don't show those today. But I usually have them on here, so I'll have Jason or Emily or Jessica or whatever, and they'll be on here, and I can go into their page.
Okay, so the individual therapist and behavior therapist or speech therapist
Yes.
can work with creating a custom tablet for the child, a template.
Okay. And this goes with that child. This goes to school. This goes to behavioral therapists.
Right.
This goes to speech therapy. This is home in your bathroom. This is in your kitchen. This is in your living room. And this is providing language for your child. And this data collection can go with you throughout the day so you can see your progress.
Okay, so what happens if we touch bathroom? What do we get to see?
So if we touch bathroom goes into the bathroom page. And these are just some sample photos that I took.
Okay.
And I like the fact that it says it as well. So they touch it, so they're seeing the text, touch it, and getting the spoken word as well.
Correct.
So we're building skills there. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and I put the words on top of the photos for incidental learning. So we're always teaching reading.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And it's a multimodality. So we're teaching speech because you hear my voice, and you could record your voice, father's voice. If your child is verbal, can say 1 to 2 words, you can record their voice on here. So whoever's voice you want to record, it's in digitized speech, so it's that natural voice that you hear, and they are required to imitate it as well.
Okay.
So just going down here, you can, and I put some signs on here too. I've worked with deaf and hard of hearing over the years as well, and I know a lot of families and children with autism are familiar with some basic signs. You know, for want, and you know, let's see some more. And this is what I took these of my hands with a black felt background. It took months to take these pictures.
I'm sure.
You can imagine. I have a flip down screen, so if you go here and you want to add a color, you could tap on a color, purple, and it goes down to your screen. What I found in other apps I was using was the navigation problem. You know, our children they need quick access to communication. And we're having to go back to the home page, then to the colors, then pick a color, then go back to the home, then to the bathroom. By that point, they don't really want a color anymore. They just want to get their needs met. So the flip down, they don't leave the screen.
It's amazing how fast technology can grow and help our kids, because even just a couple of years ago, kids were walking around with these huge PEC books.
Absolutely.
And they were having to flip through, and it was frustrating for them.
Right.
And then, you know, we started with apps, and everybody said, oh, this is amazing, but clearly you've streamlined it in a way that's made it even more user-friendly for our kids. That's
and based on
wonderful.
your experience, which I think is great. And, you know, I can only say, when I look at someone like you, Kim, a young woman like you, it just really makes me feel good that there's such passionate, committed people getting into this field and helping our children. I just want to say I'm very impressed by you.
Thank you so
and
much.
the work you're doing. I mean, it took a lot of initiative to do this.
Yeah.
This was you know, I feel as a speech pathologist, and if I'm going to commit my life to working with children with autism, I felt this was my duty to make, because I knew what was needed, and I was going to call their app developers to make this. I have great ideas. You know, I didn't want to do this, but all of a sudden I just knew I had to do this, and I just want to give back as much as I can.
You're a really enterprising young woman, and how can they get it?
Yes,
I mean,
let's talk about the
let's talk
realities
about
of
how
it. What's
reality.
it called? How do we get it?
Yeah. So it's Panda Pal Autism Communication System.
Okay.
It's on iTunes now, and it's only $45.
Okay.
Good deal. Now, I can also say that ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, does have an assisted technology program. We have given many iPads out, and we are continuing to do that. So people can go to our website, act-today.org. They can look at the application. They can apply for an iPad, and we are giving out the Panda Pal app with that if you request it.
That's wonderful.
Okay.
Absolutely fabulous. But if somebody is not doing the grant and they want to buy it today, where do they go to buy it?
Just go to iTunes and put Panda Pal, and it'll pop up. And I do have a free version coming out for families, because I know there's so many apps out there, and I've bought so many because I wanted to try it. I thought they were going to work, and they didn't.
Right.
So I want to give families an opportunity to try it out for free.
Okay.
And it's a small version. It just comes with 4 categories. You can add on 1 picture, and you could test it and see if it works for your child. If it's something that they like, that will work for them.
Great. I have one final question from you, because we often ask this, Shannon and I. If you had one piece of advice to give parents out there listening, based on your work with our kids with autism, what would you say to them?
Make sure they have access to their communication. wherever they're at, make sure that they have access to that. Whether if they're verbal, then improving their language, providing models for them. If they're not, sometimes our speech, it's under construction for some of our kids. And instead of forcing them down that road, we want to access cognition, language development, expressive language, receptive vocabulary. How do we get there quickest? So visually. Most of our kids with autism, at least our younger kids, rely on that path. And so stepping back and saying, it's okay if they're not talking right now, but I want to help them access their language. How can I get into their world? And how can I do that? And so if you find that you're prompting your child to speak, if they're going by the door and they want to go out but they're not saying it, and if you're saying outside, I want to go outside, and they're repeating you, then they're relying on you as their means to communication. So they need to be independent. They need to come to you. And that's why I designed this system for parents to be empowered to do that. And there's teaching opportunities throughout the day, all the time. So take advantage of those opportunities, whether it's in the car, it's at home, wherever you are. There's so many opportunities, and it's not just when they're in the speech therapy room with that therapist for 30 minutes 3 times a week where you paid so much money and advocates to get there. There's so many hours of the day with parents.
So take that and put it into the home and into daily living. That's great advice.
And I have to say, I love to hear you saying what you just said, because a lot of times parents speaking and vocalization is so important to so many of us. It's an emotional issue. And I know a lot of parents, excuse me, feel like if they're going to go to this kind of assisted technology that it means we're giving up.
Yes.
When in fact it's completely the opposite.
Yes.
Studies have shown that if you give your child this kind of ability to communicate, you will get to the speech faster and happier because they're less frustrated, correct?
Exactly.
That's good to know.
That is,
yes.
is a message I always try to get across. And I'm a speech pathologist. I want them to talk.
Absolutely.
Because I want to do a good job, and I want that more than anything.
Right.
But I realize over the years I've seen the kids that have had technology or have had access to pictures to communicate, we could tap into their language. So if I go to evaluate a child and verbally they're relying on therapist, teacher, or parent to verbally prompt them, they're going to bomb the assessment.
Right.
And if they have a system to communicate, to access language, development, then that's how they're going to grow. And speech will come in over time, and there's only so much we could do.
Yeah.
But this does prompt them. So I require them to read the word, see the picture, and they say it. And I've had students where they've done this and they've heard my voice on here actually speak clearer than they do when they hear me for some reason.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Technology is fascinating.
Yeah.
But for parents to know it's not an either or, that if you are going to work on something like this, it doesn't mean that speech isn't coming at all.
That's right.
And in a lot of cases, it can precipitate it that much faster.
Good to know.
But Kim, thank you so much for taking the time to do this and coming in and showing to us Panda Pal.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
You're delightful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back, right?
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Yep.
My name is Crystal Shepard.
I'm Pete.
And our son Logan was diagnosed in February of 2003. Wow, it seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
We were fortunate enough to find CARD when he was 20 months old. My husband called and said, "You need to go to this place. I've researched it. You need to go right now." So I went and knocked on the door, and we found Doreen.
Doreen, we sat down, and I'll never forget what she said. She goes, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get him caught up and make sure he never falls behind again." I was like, that's it, you know?
He's a very fun, popular kid.
Rock star.
Rock star. He's a drummer, quite an accomplished drummer. He never stops talking. He's got a funny story and a smile for everybody that he meets. And it's pretty amazing. He's a completely different kid. Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
My name's Monica.
And I'm Mark.
And we have a son, Riley, and he is autistic.
Riley was almost completely non-communicative at the time that he was diagnosed. Really no language, no interest in speaking. And one of the big changes is he independently states a lot of things now.
I need to walk.
You need to walk? Make him walk. Asks for things that he wants, responds appropriately.
Hi, Daddy Dory.
Oh, so nice. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
And now she engages with everybody. It's wonderful. She likes to play, and she's very affectionate, and she expresses that now. Her language has gotten a lot better just in the last 4 months. It's amazing.
Since starting with CARD, Amaya's made a ton of progress, and we couldn't be more grateful that she has become potty trained, started using utensils individually. She is learning how to navigate public, is holding our hands, and just wanting to be around people more. So we're so grateful for everything that you guys have done.
Hi, Dr. Grandpa Shay. Congratulations on your 20-year anniversary of CARD. I love all my CARD teachers. They are the best. And now I'd like to play you a Beatles song. It's called Cross the Universe.
I first saw Dr. Grandpa Shay speak at a biomedical conference somewhere, and I was just so impressed with her. She stood up there and she talked with such confidence about recovery and what she could do for these children, and she had a whole curriculum, and I was just so impressed. But she said things like, you know, teach them, help them to develop these other skills that they have. And I thought that was so neat hearing that from her, that it would be good for them socially and help them to bridge with others. And so over the years, that's actually something my son has developed. You know, if he hadn't had speech therapy or OT over the years, he probably would be just about, you know, pretty much the same child still, not so different. But if he hadn't had CARD, I mean, he would be a completely different child. This program has unlocked the door for him to have a bright future.
Bye. Thanks for watching.
My name is Rachel Pokorski, and I have a son, Kyle Pokorski, who's 7 years old now.
Cool art by Kyle.
Around 15 months, we noticed that he had lost some speech, that he was headbanging, he had tantrums, and we were lucky. We waited and we got in with CARD, and it started working right away.
I have another exciting feature. If you put more marbles in, they alternate.
He's in a second grade class. He's at the top of his class. He reads over 100 words a minute. He's reading at 5th grade level. He loves space and astronomy, and he'll tell you, you know, why does Venus rotate backwards? Yeah, why don't the marbles go up? Why do they go down?
Because gravity.
And he's always wanting to know more.
Why you're the one that takes the microphone.
He loves to surf.
First, I didn't want to surf, but now I love to surf.
He loves to horseback ride.
I won a trophy.
You have made a difference in his life.
Card helped me to save.
I owe everything to you. Now, who built this?
I did.
And are you a good builder?
Yes!
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy.
And we have a wonderful guest for you right now. We're going to be joined via Skype with Cynthia Conway. She is the president and founder for the nonprofit that is involved with the Hacienda Oaks Estates. Cynthia, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
There she is. I understand you have a big event. We talked about it a little bit last week, but tell us what you have going on this weekend.
Yes, we have an event. It's a family event. It is a farm festival where we harvested our first harvest of avocados from the farm. We'll be having bounce house and face painting and petting zoo and that stuff for the kids, as well as we have local food vendors, some wineries, and a brewery that will be attending, as well as some foods regarding autism, such as art for autism and those types of foods that will be present in our event. We have a special appearance by Eddie Money.
Wow.
His quote is, 2 tickets to paradise. He's going to take us all there.
Oh, I love that. I love that song.
And looking at the ticket price, you can go on our website at www.haciendaoaks.org and to purchase tickets.
Okay, great. And we're going to put up a link to that website. Cynthia, can you tell us about Hacienda Oak Estates and what the program is going to be, what you're fundraising for?
Sure. Our mission statement is providing a self-sustaining farm that will offer opportunities for the community to live free and healthy, while empowering adults with developmental disabilities to live meaningful and productive lives. So really looking at the opportunities that currently are not provided in the community to foster the occupations that are meaningful to those with developmental disabilities, specifically autism. So because I know the reports have come out on CNN regarding the CDC's latest of now 1 in 80 children with autism, the growth of students that are graduating now, that the population grew with more kids that I've been working with too are now reaching teenage years and don't have the occupation support for things that are meaningful to them. So their options are very limited. So the same as neurotypical, we want choices, diet, jobs that are meaningful to us, occupation and leisure, engagement in spirituality, those types of things that may not necessarily be accessible currently, is creating a community within a community where our community members, those with the spectrum disorder, are able to interact with the local community and
Okay, we're having some difficulty being able to hear you, Cynthia, and so they're reporting that they're not being able to hear you, but Nancy and I can hear you a little bit to hear that's really remarkable work that you guys are doing to be able to create meaningful working opportunities and opportunities to interact with the community for children, for
young adults to be able to work and contribute and have vocations and in a very healthy way, servicing the community, organic farming, that kind of thing. So we're going to put the info up, and we're going to encourage everybody in the LA, west of LA area, the San Fernando Valley, to get out, and there's the flyer. And Eddie Money, 2 tickets to paradise. You can bring your kids to this, and the adults can listen to Eddie and wine tasting, and the kids can do face painting and petting zoo. And it's really important that we support efforts to employ our young adults with autism. I cannot stress this enough. It's something that Shannon and I are passionate about, finding ways to employ them in the community and giving them a meaningful place to thrive and work and grow.
And
right?
what better way to do it than keeping the community green, and they're having an avocado harvest. How exciting is
fantastic.
that? That's very exciting to me. Okay, so Cynthia, we want to thank you, and I'm sorry that we were having technical difficulties, but thank you so much, and we'll want to hear how your event goes on Saturday, and we hope you just raise a ton of money.
I'm planning to be there, Cynthia, so I'll track you down and we can sing 2 Tickets to Paradise together.
So we're going to take a short break, and thank you, Cynthia. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some other events, one in particular that Nancy and I are both going to be at on Saturday morning that you might be interested in as well. Stick with us. Back in just a minute. Yes.
The Autism Society exists to improve the lives of all affected by autism. We work to increase public awareness about the day-to-day issues faced by people on the spectrum, advocate for appropriate services for individuals across their lifespan, and provide the latest information regarding treatment, education, research, and advocacy. For more information, visit www.autismsociety.org.
Here I stand. A man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, to celebrate you is greater now that I can. You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I'm awe of and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up CARD, all of you, is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering love and commitments to helping others and me recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with CARD who isn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful with what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've been talking about things going on this weekend, and there's a big event that we're going to be going to together on Saturday morning.
Yes.
You and I out in the world.
Out in the world. I mean, I'm gonna get to that Hacienda Oaks event in the afternoon, and then I'm gonna be just exhausted on Saturday.
I don't know how you're going to do that.
I know. Well, we'll see how I feel after the walk.
Yes,
we are going to be at the Autism Speaks Autism Walk, which is the, what were you saying,
It's
how
the
many years
10th annual Walk Now for Autism.
That's amazing.
Los Angeles.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And I love this event, and I talk frequently about this event. If you're anywhere within driving distance of Los Angeles and have the opportunity to go to this is the one that you should go to. I really believe it is life-changing.
Okay.
It's huge. They're expecting more than 25,000 people. And even if you just come for the resource fair, if you're brand new to autism and you don't have it together to walk, that's okay. There's nobody standing there saying you must walk. But come at least to the resource fair, even if you stand at one moment and just look at the crowd and see all those people and know that everyone there cares so deeply about somebody with autism that they got up and put on shoes on a Saturday morning and went through all kinds of
You're starting to tear up.
Yes. yes, to park to be able to be there. And you know, if you've had even one day on this journey where you felt like you were alone, come to this event and stand there and realize you are not alone.
You're definitely not alone. I mean, we're the autism nation, as our friend Bernard Piero says.
Yes.
You know, with this being an epidemic and 1 in 54 boys and probably much more, and 1 in 88 children, we are the autism generation, and we are being heard. Everybody's taking notice. There are studies being done. There is answers are on the way. We have answers. We have a lot of things available to us now to help our children, like skills. And I also want to say, we're going to be giving away some random little giveaways. Like, look, cool. Autism affects all schools. Get skills. You can put that on your card.
Or autism, you can't ignore it.
How about some Act Today, I'm an Activist mugs? I'll throw some of those in. How about that?
And we have some card water bottles to give out too. So,
all right, well, we got lots of stuff.
So we're going to be there in the middle of the resource fair. You'll have to find us. We're not at a specific booth. We're going to be coming around and interviewing you guys to put on the show next week. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get to meet with your community, and Nancy and I are part of your community. So we want to meet you.
We want you to stop by, say hello to us, and we really always want your suggestions for topics, your feedback, what you like to hear from us, what you like to see. I think that's really important that we're in touch with the public, so I'm really excited about being there.
I am too, and whenever we have an opportunity to be with that many people and say that we're all working towards the greater good for our kids, something wonderful happens.
That's
it's
right.
Amazing.
Yeah, power in numbers.
It is. And there's the resource fair, so while you're there, you're going to get to meet us, and you're going to get all this information, anything that has anything to do with autism. They're giving away free stuff. You'll come home with so many sensory toys.
Yeah, you said, now, sometimes I get a little overwhelmed at these things. So you had some good advice on what to do, that you go.
They will give you a bag when you go in. You'll register. If you're bringing your child, and I encourage you to bring your child, you'll fill out a lost child ticket so that if you happen to get separated, they have a multi-step system so that all the kids will be safe.
Okay.
But you go, you register, and then they'll give you a bag, and a lot of booths hand out bags too. And I would just go, this is what I've always done, and my husband will do it for me on Saturday, just go from booth to booth and take whatever flyer, whatever free giveaway, and then you can go home later on and sort through it all.
Okay.
Because otherwise, if you stop and talk to every individual person, you're only going to get down 10 booths, and you're going to miss out. And I would go through at the end of the day, we go home, I separate, okay, here are the sensory toys, here are the flyers that are for right now that I really need to deal with, here are the flyers for down the road, for when he's a teenager, and I put them in my resource file. So I've got it down the road.
You know what? I am in awe of you.
No, don't be.
I am in awe of you.
Don't be. I'll show you my old resource files.
You are so organized.
No. If you saw my house, you would see that is such a lie. I'm not organized. But information is a premium, right?
Information is a premium. And Kim Scott, who we had on today's program, I met her at the All Ages and Abilities Asperger's and Autism Conference down in Anaheim. And a lot of the guests on our show I meet at conferences and things like this. And I imagine you and I are going to have people to talk to for the next year minimum.
You get connected. And Kim said she's going to be there at the walk.
She's going to be there. So you could talk to her about Panda Pals. There's going to be so much there.
There'll be lawyers and advocates and nutritionists and ABA providers and people who with the therapy dogs, everything possible.
Everything that you might need or even think you need for your child, and things you can investigate and look at for the future.
And there's some superstars there as well.
Yeah.
Joe Montagna is going to be there. Ed Asner is going to be. We do love Joe. Ed Asner is going to be there.
Ed Asner, Matt's dad.
Right. Matt is running the whole show. We're going to get a chance to see him again on Saturday.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get to sit down with him briefly.
Yes, he promised he would.
You think Ed Asner will say to me, "You got spunk"? I hate spunk.
We're going to get him to say that. We'll get him to say that because you do have spunk. So we'll definitely work on that. We'll make sure that we can get that. And some other incredible stars that are going to be there as well. It's a huge event.
You told me that the girl from the Bee in Apartment
23, the star of that show.
Like a cute show.
It does look like a cute show.
Not for our kids, I hear, but a cute show.
So we'll hopefully have an opportunity to speak to her. And, but you guys can be there and hobnob and rub elbows with everyone and get that important information. And I think the best thing, though, is to feel the community. You can't buy that.
No, you can't.
It recharges my battery for the whole year. I really get excited about it. So come and let me be part of your community. Let Nancy be part of your community.
I think we all need a little recharging every now and then. I know I do.
Yes, we do. And also it's a place where everybody gets it. So if you bring your child, it's a wonderful thing.
Okay, so bottom line is we hope to see you there.
Absolutely.
And next week we're going to be reviewing some of the great people we talked to,
Wonderful.
right?
So this show ends, but the conversation continues.
And we
be
will
in touch with us.
See you next week, right?
So take care, you guys.
Okay.
See you next week.
Bye.